Chapter 31. As always, John was looking at the scenery, his hands also not idle, practicing ripple with his fingers in a glass of water. A man with a rather mature appearance walked up to John and said, "What a coincidence, young man." John turned his head, politely glanced at him, and looked completely blank. Who is this guy? Why is he looking for me? After all, John was still young, whether it was his previous life where he had just graduated and hadn't yet stepped into the big dying vat of society, or this life where he was still young, he couldn't hide his thoughts. Looking at John's puzzled expression, a surge of anger arose in his heart for no reason. "MMP, you little brat, selling your ass dares to look down on me." Actually, it wasn't that John looked down on them, it's just that John really didn't remember. There were so many people in the Hunter exam, it's unrealistic to remember them one by one. As for after the end of the second exam, who would remember the name of a loser? They didn't experience the same thing as John in the second exam, so they didn't know John's achievements. However, he still had professional ethics, not showing his emotions. He smilingly invited John to come and play at their place. "Hey, I have some food here, do you want some?" The uncle looked like a goldfish trying to abduct a child, which made John very worried. Could it be because I'm too handsome? He won't be targeting me, right? John looked disgusted, and the uncle couldn't keep his face straight. "What's with that expression? Are you looking down on me?" The uncle was already roaring in his heart. But his face was still very kind. Looking at the uncle's kind face, John felt guilty in his heart, wondering if he was judging people by their appearance again. Besides, the smell of John's snack was so strong. John summoned Adam God, "Is this bread okay?" Of course. Only after Adam God gave a positive answer did John dare to eat this bread of unknown origin. "It seems there are still more good people now. We also have an empty shop there, do you want to come and play at our place?" John's eyes suddenly sharpened. What exactly does he want to do? Could it be? Don't get me wrong, it doesn't matter if you don't come. If you come to our place, there will be a lot of delicious and fun things. Wait, these lines are so familiar, may I ask your esteemed name, sir? Little thing, you better come with me obediently. Something pressed against John's kidney. This feeling, it's a gun. John first used Stone Free to turn his whole body into strings. Then he summoned King Crimson, ready to erase time at any moment. "Brat, come with me obediently." John decided to go with him. Actually, John was capable of killing him in his current stand fully activated state, but he just said "we," which meant he had accomplices. If he killed him, he might alert the others, and John didn't want to be targeted by enemies while sleeping. John reluctantly followed Brother G to their sleeper compartment. There were also two burly men leaning against the wall with baseball bats in their hands. They were staring straight at John. "You bunch of social trash, scum. I haven't even cross-dressed yet, and you're already coveting my beauty." "Sorry, you misunderstood. We just want your hunter license," said an old bald man with a face full of stubble. John was suddenly shocked. How did he know that I passed the hunter exam? Could it be other examinees? That doesn't make sense, there were only a few people participating in the final exam. John wasn't stupid, he still remembered the faces of these few people. Besides, he just met them yesterday. Could it be that other examinees sold my information? If the people who participated in the final exam knew that I had superpowers, they wouldn't use guns to seek death. John could tell that they didn't know an abilities. Could it be that they were using it to test John? John couldn't guess. "Hey, brat, quickly hand over the hunter license, or you'll be in for a treat," a burly man said sternly. "Who told you this information?" John was expressionless and very calm. "Ha ha ha, I actually guessed right. As expected of the boss. With the hunter license, we won't have to worry about food and drink for half our lives." After hearing their words, John knew that they were guessing. "MD, I was tricked by a bunch of idiots," John was furious. John summoned King Crimson, and suddenly looked desperate. "Mom selling batch," John retracted the summoning of King Crimson, and directly summoned Stone Free, and walked over. "Don't come over, or I'll shoot." The other one picked up a baseball bat and gave John a charming smile. John felt his IQ being insulted again, and kept muttering, "I'm so stupid, really." That's right, that pistol was a simulated gun that could only shoot BB bullets. John knew this through epitaph. But when John thought that he was kidnapped by a Lindsay fake gun, he felt a burst of shame. Although the security of this world is not as strict as that of China in his previous life, these younger brothers who have no money, no power, and no strength can't hide from the security personnel. John directly already over with his body, stone free blocked the baseball bat with one hand, and attacked the opponent's abdomen with the other. One fell down. At this time, a BB bullet flew towards John. The two burly men rushed towards John shouting. 2 minutes later, the bald burly man hugged John's leg and begged bitterly, "Please, don't hit me, you'll kill someone if you hit me again," the bald uncle said with a mournful face. His voice was a little distorted. John kicked him away, and after listening to his words, he thought it was true that he couldn't kill people, but John's fist didn't stop. It just so happened that he could practice the healing ability of Ripple Qigong. With Ripple healing, he wouldn't be afraid of killing them all at once. I really am a kind person. They didn't realize John's plan at all. 5 minutes later, John crossed his legs, and the three people knelt in front of John in a row. "Joseph-sama, John's pseudonym, please accept all the money we have." John's gaze locked onto the bald man's clothes. "This is our travel expenses back," Brother G said with a look of grief. The bald man gritted his teeth and handed over the money hidden in a mezzanine to John. John originally didn't want it, but he couldn't stand their enthusiasm. When John didn't accept it, they cried and cried, threatening to die, so John had no choice but to accept it. John's budget suddenly became more abundant. 2 days later, John bid farewell to several humanoid creatures with faces swollen like pig heads. After John walked far away, they couldn't help it anymore, and the three people hugged each other and howled. "He's finally gone, that demon. I'll never take the hunter exam again." The three hugged each other, experiencing the joy of sending John away. "I've decided, I'll still go home and farm. The hunter exam is not suitable for me." John was completely unaware of how much psychological trauma he had given the three. John was happily walking on the street. The Heavens Arena, as the tallest building in the city, stands in the city center and is easily recognizable. The surrounding area is a bustling market. Shops stand in great numbers, tourists gather, rubbing shoulders with each other, a lively scene. John curiously looked around. Because of the unique culture of the hunter world, many of the surrounding goods were unheard of in his previous life. Unknowingly, night fell, and John also walked to the bottom of the Heavens Arena tower. John smiled slightly and pushed open the door. "Hunter world, John is here." Chapter 32. The Heavens Arena has a total of 251 floors and stands at 991 feet tall, claiming to be the fourth tallest building of the century. The Heavens Arena is entirely white, with a strange shape and inexplicable protrusions. At night, the entire Heavens Arena turns black, adorned with the lights of countless small rooms. John walked into the tower and saw a long queue. Because the Heavens Arena has almost no requirements, unlike the hunter exam which involves layered screening, all sorts of people can sign up here. Because for each enemy defeated on a floor, a corresponding reward can be obtained, with higher floors yielding greater rewards. Weapons are not allowed below the 200th floor. To be honest, with John's Crimson King and Stone free, no one below the 200th floor can pose a threat to John. John spent more than an hour waiting in line to reach the registration desk. "Please fill in your personal information," the registration lady said sweetly. As expected of the Heavens Arena's customer service, she didn't look down on John because of his young age. The lady quickly tapped the keyboard a couple of times, revealing a professional smile. "Mr. John Belosevic, you are number 3052. The lady also kindly told John some precautions. Arriving at the lobby on the first floor, well, it's almost exactly the same as in the manga, but more spectacular in reality. Dozens of fighting rings, filled with philosophical vibes. Each fighting ring had two strong men grappling with each other, their clothes already tattered from the intense combat. The scene was very intense. The Heavens Arena has a severely imbalanced male-to-female ratio. John looked around and didn't see a single woman. Those who come here are confident in their fighting abilities. Women are generally weaker than men, and weapons are not allowed below the 200th floor. Actually, encountering women in the Heavens Arena is very troublesome, because the female participants who sign up are basically non-users. So women basically only appear above the 200th floor. John couldn't help but sigh, lamenting that he couldn't enjoy the sight of clothes being ripped off during combat. Number 3052, number 1084, please proceed to ring F to prepare. The broadcast's call pulled John's thoughts back. He didn't expect it to be his turn so quickly. John quickly ran to ring F. Well, the opponent is a strong man in his 30s. Another kid again. Finish him quickly. Some spectators were stirring up trouble. No one thought John would win. Hey, kid, there's still time to escape. This isn't a game. If you don't escape, then forget it. I'll KO you with one hit later, don't worry. John's opponent was a strong man in his 20s or 30s, who smiled and yelled, completely disregarding John. He was only slightly stronger than the average person, coming to the Heavens Arena to try his luck. He didn't expect his first opponent to be a child, which he considered very lucky. John didn't summon his stand. To be honest, this weakling wasn't worth John using his stand. Due to training and ripple breathing exercises, John's strength was also slightly better than that of a normal adult. Although not comparable to Gon and Killua's monstrous strength, he was still a top performer among people of his age. The opponent threw a punch, with a wide and obvious intent. There were no skills, completely relying on his strong body and height exceeding John to launch the attack. Well, the attack is very predictable, even without Crimson King. John lightly dodged the punch. Well, this left straight punch should be imitating boxers, but the training is obviously not up to par, the speed is too slow. John retreated to advance, dodging the attack and directly stepping forward, cutting into the opponent's central line, using all his strength to strike the opponent's stomach. John's agility far exceeded his opponent's, but John didn't have overwhelming power. This punch didn't finish the opponent at once, but it also brought him great pain. A backhand right hook followed. John didn't stop, using his elbow to strike the opponent's jaw. The opponent noticed John's intention and took a step back, dodging John's attack. Although the opponent's combat skills were not high, he was definitely ruthless. He clenched his fist into a double phoenix fist and struck towards John's temple, a very vicious attack. However, it was fortunate that he didn't have any high-level combat experience, and didn't take the opportunity to attack John's unguarded abdomen. John's elbow striking hand rotated, entangling the opponent's hand. John suddenly jumped up, hooking his body, and suddenly exerting force with his legs. His feet kicked towards the opponent's face, and the opponent also used his arms to block John's kick. But his arm was instantly crippled by a huge force. John took the opportunity to run up and stopped, looking at the opponent holding his arm. Ora 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 ora. Number 3052, you can directly go to the 40th floor to compete. The referee next to him had no expression, very calm, already accustomed to this kind of thing. Looking at the opponent who was lying on the ground and unable to get up, John wasn't happy. He had to use so many moves to defeat the opponent. This was only the first floor's opponent. Gon and Killua in the anime could instantly kill opponents of this level. If stands aren't counted, John is far from being able to defeat Gon of the same age. Of course, if stands are used, John is confident that he can defeat the opponent just now with one blow. Hey, are all the kids so powerful these days? There was one last time, and now another monster has come. Don't talk nonsense, that kid is much more terrifying than him. That kid's speed is terrifyingly fast. One of my brothers fought him and is still in the hospital. He has already killed 2 opponents in battle. If you encounter him, it's best to just admit defeat. Are you talking about that kid who came a year ago? I heard he's only 7 years old now. I also heard that he's currently on the 130th floor. John heard their gossip and didn't expect there to be such a strong kid. That child was even younger than Gon and Killua in the original story, and he had already reached more than 100 floors, truly a young hero. John shook his head and walked away. He definitely couldn't reach the 200th floor without using stands, whether in terms of strength or combat experience. But this was indeed an opportunity for John to improve his main body's combat experience. The main body has always been the weakness of stand users. Some seemingly invincible stand users were killed after people found their main body. In the Jojo world, even if the main body is strong, it is impossible to defeat a stand. Only stand users can defeat stand users. But the physical limit of the hunter world is much higher. Learning the abilities can make up for this weakness. John strengthened his determination to learn the abilities. John and a delivery guy took the elevator to the 30th floor together. The delivery guy pressed the button for the 130th floor. From the package he was carrying, it was clear that it was a bag of candy. Eating so much candy on the 100th floor reminded John of the information he had just obtained. It seemed that these candies were for that 7-year-old prodigy. John didn't pay much attention and walked straight out of the elevator. The delivery guy continued upwards. My candy is almost here. A white-haired child sat on the bed, looking out the window with joy, waiting. Chapter 33. After ascending to the 30th floor, John quickly received a new challenge. In fact, the battles of the first 50 floors were just preliminary screenings, and the competition time was also limited. But it was indeed effective, eliminating most of the contestants at once. To be honest, the strength of the opponents on the 30th floor wasn't much different from that of the first floor. They were all a bunch of reckless guys, even a newbie like John, who hadn't undergone systematic fighting training, could defeat them. The Sky Arena has thousands of people signing up for competitions every day, ensuring that the Sky Arena has constant vitality. But above the 50th floor, the quality of the contestants has improved significantly. Although they have confidence in their eyes, no one despises John. Because the people who come to the 50th floor are not easy to deal with, and they will not underestimate John because of his young age. Some people who can kill their opponents with one move on the first floor also directly go to the 50th floor. Above the 50th floor, the stands are basically full, and the audience raises their hands to cheer, as if the competition is between world-class fighters. The audience will also choose to bet on one side to win. They all wanted to overwhelm John with their self-proclaimed superior physical fitness, but they didn't expect that John's physical fitness, which had been tempered by Ripple Qigong, was far above them. In fact, John doesn't have any fighting skills. John has only fought a few battles since his debut, and they were all fought by his stand. Usually, he uses his stand to easily solve problems, and he himself has not made much progress. However, to deal with the first 100 floors, he can barely reach the 100th floor without using his stand and Ripple, relying on his IQ and control over the battle. John has been crushing his opponents with his stand, which makes John feel very unreal. The power came too easily. Ripple was at least cultivated through practice, but the stand was drawn from a card. John still has concerns in his heart. The golden finger is not very reliable after all. What if the golden finger disappears one day? Only the power that he has worked hard to obtain is solid. John made a restriction on himself, he would not use Ripple Qigong and his stand below the 100th floor. Without the assistance of special powers, John stumbled and successfully reached the 100th floor on the third day. The 100th floor is a watershed. Above the 100th floor, the treatment is very different. Just reaching the 100th floor will earn you a reward of about 1 million jenny, 150th floor will earn you about 10 million jenny, and reaching the 200th floor will accumulate a reward of about 200 million jenny. Each contestant above the 100th floor is equipped with a separate room. In order to better obtain this kind of treatment and high prize money for a long time, everyone uses their best skills. Opponents above the 100th floor, unless they have physical fitness far exceeding ordinary people, almost everyone has certain fighting skills. Every fight on each floor is very fierce. For everyone who desires to fight, this is the best stage. The opponent's attacks are flexible and unpredictable. Without using Ripple Qigong and stand abilities, it may be difficult to go further. John almost suffered a Waterloo when he entered the 100th floor. If John hadn't lifted the restriction in time and used Ripple Dash, catching the opponent off guard, he would have fallen below the 100th floor again. In fact, from the 100th floor, John's strength is not enough to KO his opponents. The opponents are also beyond John's cunning and insidious. He can only win by scoring points by hitting his opponents through the rules. John's fighting skills have also improved significantly compared to before. Ding! The elevator door opened, and John began a new challenge. John successfully ascended to the 130th floor. Next, he will have to deal with opponents on the 130th floor to complete the challenge. The fights on the 100th floor and above are not like those below the 100th floor, where all the contestants gather together. Fighters on the 100th floor can usually skip watching the matches. However, they must participate in one match every day unless they are seriously injured. Contestants are notified before each match starts. Each match has betting odds, which is also one of the main profit-generating items for the Sky Arena. Besides that, another profit-generating item is selling tickets, especially tickets for matches above the 200th floor. Matches above the 200th floor are not held every day, only a few times a month. Tickets must be reserved in advance. Of course, contestants above the 200th floor can enter and exit the competition venue for free. John arrived at the 135th floor. Unlike below the 100th floor, almost everyone bets on a certain contestant they favor, and the audience's enthusiasm is very high. John waited for about 10 minutes before it was his turn. Number 3052, John Barasevic, versus number 2054, Killua Zaldik. This is a duel between two young geniuses. Who will win in the end? A sweet and energetic girl wearing headphones guides the audience to watch a highlight reel of John's and Killua's fights on the big screen. In the screen, John is very cool, slightly dodging the enemy's attack, and then KOing the opponent with one punch. Then, Killua's small body is like a ghost surrounding the enemy, and countless hand knives instantly strike the opponent, causing the opponent's body to make the sound of bones breaking, and the enemy falls down. These clips are to allow the audience to better understand the strength of the contestants, so they can place their bets. The audience's enthusiasm was immediately ignited. But John was even more excited than them. Oh my god, today I finally saw the living Killua. As the male second, Killua's popularity far exceeds Gon. He is cute on the outside and very handsome when he is serious. Basically, most manga fans who watch Hunter x Hunter like Killua. John didn't expect that the rumored little monster was Killua. John always thought that Killua was training assassination techniques at home when he was young. 7-year-old Killua jumped and landed on the fighting arena. His expression was indifferent and cold, as if he didn't take John seriously at all. But his eyes never left John, which is the basic quality of an assassin. Eyes must never leave the opponent. The match hasn't started yet, but the audience can't hold back anymore. This fighting match is very topical. On one side is the 7-year-old Killua who has been stable on the 130th floor for several months. On the other side is John, who is 12 years old and has fought his way up in less than a week. But the current Killua still lives in the shadow of his brother Illumi. He has no friends and is completely driven by orders. Fight start. The two stood in silence. John's only intention towards Killua was the curiosity of seeing the characters in the manga. John didn't want to be treated like a perv. After a brief silence, Killua decided to strike first. Killua's body rushed towards John like a cannonball. So fast. Chapter 34. So fast. John couldn't help but exclaim. However, after many days of fighting, John's combat skills have also improved a lot. Although Killua is very fast, John is not to be underestimated. In an instant, John understood that Killua's speed far surpassed his own, and John reacted immediately. No matter which way he ran, he would inevitably expose his back, which would be a death sentence to Killua, from a family of professional assassins. John didn't dodge, but clenched his fists and placed them in front of his face, crouching down. Killua was also surprised. After all, most people can't react effectively to such a high-speed attack. When facing experts, they would first defend against Killua's attack, and then create an environment, such as running to one side of the arena, so that Killua's attack angle would be greatly reduced. Then they would use their ability to withstand blows, which was stronger than Killua's, and some special techniques to counterattack. But Killua was still very puzzled. Why did John crouch down? It would be very easy to be attacked. If he were in front of John now, he could take John's head in an instant. Maybe John was frightened by Killua's speed and was waiting to die with his head in his hands. Killua instantly ruled out this possibility. Someone who could rise to this level should not be so frightened by the speed that they would give up resistance. John's crouching with his head in his hands did not block his eyes with his fists. Blocking the eyes in battle is undoubtedly a noob move. It was precisely because the exposed eyes revealed a flaw. Killua did not see despair, fear, or sluggishness in John's eyes. The thing flashing in John's black eyes was definitely not the wail of the weak, but the confidence of the brave. Killua felt uneasy, immediately stopped, and retreated several steps, looking at John with a wary expression. John's intention was seen through, but he still acted according to his previous idea. The muscles on his legs suddenly exerted force. Bang! The force generated by John's feet exploding impacted the arena floor, and his whole person was like a shell leaving the chamber, even faster than Killua. This was a trick that John had figured out himself, which could avoid head attacks and counterattack. This move can instantly gain super high speed and attack power. However, the disadvantages are also obvious. This move has extremely low flexibility and cannot change its trajectory during the attack process. In other words, it will become a living target during use, and it is difficult to take back the move. This is not a problem for low-end fighters, but for advanced fighters, this flaw is fatal. High-speed movement to dodge bullets is a distraction for people who have never touched a gun. But for trained snipers, it has no effect. John just caught Killua off guard. In just a moment of daze, John had already rushed in front of Killua. Dora la 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 la. John's fists were thrown out at high speed. Killua crossed his hands in front of him, and his body retreated, trying to reduce the damage of John's punches. After using some force means and getting out of John's attack range, he immediately jumped to John's side. There were scars on his arms from John's punches. At this time, the composure on Killua's face was long gone, and his face was solemn. The rhythm was completely disrupted. At the same time, the audience's passion also reached its peak. They did not expect that the offense and defense would be reversed in just a few seconds. The powerful combat power displayed by both sides made the audience cheer. The intensity of the battle was no less than that of the 150th floor. Killua stopped and did not attack rashly like before. Instead, he continued to retreat a few steps and began to walk slowly. Hey! John had an ominous premonition. He had to interrupt him. But it was too late. Killua had already begun to walk around John, sometimes fast and sometimes slow. 3 Killuas suddenly appeared on the field. Not only John, but the audience was also shocked by this move. In their eyes, this was a superpower. This is the Serpentine Steps, one of the Zaldik family's secret assassination techniques. Using a unique technique called Silent Steps, at a specific speed, adding unheard changes, it creates phantom afterimages for the opponent. It is a technique to deceive the opponent's eyes. The most important thing is that it can be achieved without an ability. However, it is a unique skill of the Zaldik family, and outsiders basically do not know or cannot learn this profound technique. Killua also used this move in the original work, but because he only used it once and did not achieve any results. John had forgotten this move, and John did not have such a good memory. This is troublesome. John looked at Killua's afterimages and felt a headache. John's speed was originally inferior to Killua's, and with the interference of the afterimages, John's chances of winning were slim. Ripple will not be of much use in this battle, at most it will only restore some injuries. Cold sweat had already broken out on John's forehead. In fact, what John didn't know was that the Serpentine Steps was not only to confuse the opponent's eyes, but also to put mental pressure on the opponent. To make the opponent reveal flaws under pressure, and then launch a thunderous strike. Killua's mental pressure had already achieved the desired effect, and John was already somewhat flustered because of Killua's Serpentine Steps. Killua is not the Killua of 5 years later. Before making friends with Gon, he was a complete assassin. Coupled with the Zaldik family's education, Killua would never hold back and would definitely kill his opponent. John was not confident that he could influence the current Killua. Seeing John's fluster, Killua saw that he had already revealed a flaw. Killua did not attack directly, but coldly narrowed the circle. Suddenly, the 3 Killuas on the field attacked John at the same time. At such a close distance, John had nowhere to avoid. But Killua's fighting skills and killing techniques far surpassed John, who was still a rookie. Killua's hand was only 20 centimeters away from John's chest. Under normal circumstances, Killua could be said to have won. But John is a cheater with a stand. Aura. With just one blow, Killua was knocked away. What happened? Killua was stunned. When did he attack? It was impossible, his hand didn't move at all. Killua didn't know what the attack was, but the power was very strong, far surpassing his own. He felt like he had been punched by air. A drop of cold sweat dripped down Killua. John was also breathing heavily. He was almost killed just now, but fortunately, he summoned Stone Free. Killua stared at John fiercely. Chapter 35. John was still in shock. This could be said to be the closest John had ever been to death. The mortality rate in the Heavens Arena is still controllable. There are very few opponents here who truly aim to kill. It's not that John wanted to bully Killua and break the rules, but Killua's speed was too fast and his killing intent too strong. If he hadn't used his stand, John would most likely have been killed by Killua. It seems Killua hasn't learned Snake Thrust yet, otherwise he wouldn't have been knocked back by Stone Free's punch. Suddenly, Killua raised his hand. John didn't know what kind of ultimate move he was starting. John wouldn't be careless. The Zaldik family is an ancient assassin family, so it wouldn't be strange for them to have collected all sorts of unique skills. John received his pass to the next floor and left. Killua's strength is far more than just over 130 floors. His true strength should be above 150 floors. But Killua still often loses. After fighting a few rounds, if he finds that his chances of winning are not high, he decisively admits defeat. The same was true when fighting John. He didn't understand how he was knocked away at all, and Killua didn't dare to be careless and test John's methods. Killua's brother, Illumi, inserted a needle into Killua's head. That needle subtly influences Killua's judgment. When facing opponents who are slightly stronger or about the same strength as himself, he will easily give up and run away, not daring to face them head-on. Furthermore, Killua's training is not enough, whether it is in strength or skill. He hasn't learned skills like snake thrust yet. This leads to Killua winning and losing, basically stabilizing around 150 floors. It will probably take a long time to reach 200 floors. Although Illumi's needle suppresses Killua, it is also because of this needle's guidance that Killua has been very cautious. He has been fighting in the Heavens arena for a year, but he has basically not been injured. The referee tapped a few times on a machine, and John obtained something like a receipt. This was the pass to advance. However, this battle made John discover a bug in the system. If he doesn't use his stand when fighting an enemy, then the system will not give any rewards after the battle. You are very strong, why did you give up? After the match, John wanted to find a chance to get to know Killua. Suddenly, he felt a chill in his body. A thick malice suddenly came from the audience. John looked over and saw a strange green man with nails all over his face sitting in the audience. It's Illumi. Killua's brother. This guy is a perverted brother complex. He believes that Killua doesn't need friends, and anyone who gets close to Killua or tries to become Killua's friend will be warned by him. Can't afford to provoke him, gotta run. John doesn't dare to make friends with Killua now. Killua is still undergoing his father's test. If he attracts the attention of the brother complex Illumi, John is afraid he will die. Even if John uses King Crimson, he may not be able to kill Illumi. Although they are both manipulator-type ability users, the gap between Illumi and Shulnark is still very large. Shulnark's main job in the Phantom Troop is to plan and collect intelligence, while Illumi specializes in assassination techniques. Illumi's combat power is comparable to Hisoka's, while Shulnark was killed by Hisoka, so the strength is self-evident. John's cheat, that legendary ability teacher, is still nowhere to be found. When he asks Robson, he just smiles and says nothing. I hate your silence. John can only repeatedly grind other opponents. The gold coins provided by defeating each opponent are still very considerable. In just 2 days, he grinned out a universal card. John opened the card with anticipation. Giorno Giovanna's revealing outfit. This is the outfit of a Yankee star. Okay, I can't make this up. Pink heart-shaped revealing top. Who can handle this? By the way, aren't people who wear this kind of clothes usually hosts? Won't he be sodomized by his seniors? John quite admires Giorno. John can't wear this kind of clothes. The most terrifying thing is that the other gangsters are not surprised. Wait, it seems that those gangsters are not proper gangsters either. Purple-lipped Abisho, Fugo with holes all over his body, and Bruno Bucciarati, who is the leader. Not only revealing, but also tattoos on his chest. Thinking about it this way, this clothes is not unacceptable. John calmly looked at the clothes, skin, and decided to throw it in the trash. Special skins can enhance stand abilities. Giorno Giovanna's revealing outfit, only effective for gold experience, one of the necessary items for gold experience Requiem. Gold experience Requiem, the final stand evolved by the 5th part's protagonist Giorno Giovanna after being pierced by the arrow. Power and speed both A, the ability is one more than gold experience's original ability. Returning to 0, Giorno can return something to 0. The near-invincible Diavolo was also hit by this move and couldn't approach the truth, unable to live and unable to die. It is also one of the few stands that can compete with Star Platinum for invincibility. Although John doesn't have gold experience yet, one must still have dreams, right? What if he gets it? John silently put the clothes into his system backpack. Pretending that nothing happened, John simply washed up and went to Dreamland. In his dream, the cafeteria poured spicy sauce and frantically beat up the Ant King. It's just a dream. Why was my hand attacked by something? Killua sat on the bed, looking at the wound on his hand and guessing. I still can't imagine it. It's absolutely impossible for other people. How did he do it? What John didn't know was that because of Stone Free, Killua tossed and turned all night and couldn't fall asleep. At the same time, in a room on the 215th floor, a man was sitting in front of a computer, watching a video of John and Killua's battle on the TV. The man put his hand on the ashtray and extinguished the cigarette in his hand. His other hand suddenly pressed a key on the keyboard, and the video paused. It was precisely Stone Free that only appeared for a moment. Interesting. The man smiled. Use Ren to strike 100 orthodox punches again. Yes, acting master. Chapter 36. John had been fighting a guaranteed battle every day for the past few days, grinding for gold. Kid, you are indeed very strong, but it's useless. John looked speechlessly at the masked man in front of him. This man was very distinctive, dressed scantily. He had long, messy black hair, and the few remaining clothes he wore resembled those of the great philosopher Van. And that unrestrained, arrogant expression. Are you Prince Ule? Even if you're naked, you still keep the mask. And what's with that outfit identical to Van's? Heaven-shattering, earth-destroying, invincible overlord fist, first form. The masked, scantily clad man jumped into the air, spun around 360 degrees, roared, and unleashed the fist in his hand. John blocked with both hands in front of him. Bang! John struggled to block this powerful attack, with a shocked expression. Such a strong attack, I almost didn't catch it. John even took several steps back in coordination. How is that possible? I've practiced so hard for so many years to seize the floor master's ultimate move, yet you blocked it. The masked, scantily clad man looked at John in shock. John. So, how did you even get to this floor? The masked, scantily clad man pointed at John with an expression that saw through everything, as expected of a genius young man. Could you be my destined nemesis? The man spread his arms and charged forward again. Could it be the legendary welcoming the man head-on? John decisively dodged the attack, not wanting to entangle with him any longer. Hey, why don't you face it head-on? The power of this move is almost the same as the heaven-shattering, earth-destroying, invincible overlord fist. You can take it. John couldn't bear it any longer, and punched the scantily clad man out of the arena with Stone Free. John released the limitations on using his stand, and now John could be said to be invincible below the 200th floor. This was still the result of John not using his stand right from the start. That's right, John couldn't beat them, but his stand could. John used Stone Free to easily climb 200 floors in 2 weeks. John found a proxy to bet crazily on himself winning. With his stand backing him up, he could walk sideways below the 200th floor. To prevent the audience from losing interest in betting on his opponents to win, John had to act a bit each time. John emerged from the chaos like a dark horse. Because Stone Free's power was too great, opponents were always defeated in one move just when they were about to win. Of course, there were still insiders who could see the trick. John had never been injured in any of his intense battles, which was very suspicious. More and more people invested in John, and John's odds became lower and lower. Now, betting on John didn't earn much money anymore. But it didn't matter now, John had already reached the 200th floor. The prize money had accumulated to 200 million jenny, plus the money from proxy betting, it totaled 300 million jenny. Once you reach the 200th floor, there are no staff members to send you up. You have to take the elevator yourself. Below the 200th floor, there are still some speculators, but the 200th floor is different. Any contestant on the 200th floor can easily beat multiple contestants from the 190th floor, or rather, the two are not on the same level at all. There is also a special feature of the 200th floor, which is that there are no prize money rewards above the 200th floor. Many people give up after reaching the 200th floor, either because there is no prize money or because they are not confident in their own strength. Every day, 200 contestants are able to reach the 200th floor. But only a few dozen contestants choose to stay and continue the competition. As for the contestants who can get off to a good start and stay on the 200th floor, there are basically none. Weapons can be used above the 200th floor, whether it is knives, swords, hidden weapons, or firearms. You need to re-register above the 200th floor, and still fill in personal information to confirm whether you are willing to stay and fight. The competition adopts a declared battle system. Everyone has 90 days to prepare for the battle. Contestants can use these 90 days to find a time to book a battle. Of course, some battle maniacs can also declare a battle every day. After each battle, they can get 90 days of battle preparation time again. If there is no battle within the specified time, they will be directly eliminated. Winning 10 consecutive times will give you the opportunity to challenge the floor master. There are 21 floor masters from the 230th to the 251st floor. As long as you defeat one of them, you can replace him as the floor master. The floor master is the highest honor of the Heavens Arena. It is said that Netero, the chairman of the Hunter Association, is also one of the floor masters. Even if Star Platinum was to brawl with Netero's 100-type Guanyin, it would lose. Of course, that's without using Star Platinum, the world. But Star Platinum is known as the invincible plane attack in Jojo, but it is slightly inferior to the 100-type Guanyin, and the 100-type Guanyin's range far exceeds Star Platinum. John walked through the alley where Hisoka warned Gon in the original story. Nothing happened, no senior warned John. That legendary Nin teacher didn't even show a ghost of a shadow. If Robson hadn't repeatedly assured John, John would have doubted whether there was such a person at all. If he doesn't come again, John will have to accept the baptism of the 200th floor. However, he still didn't appear. Then 3 figures appeared behind John. The 3 of them were wearing kill mat clothes. Looking at them, each of them was disabled, but they fought to the 200th floor. People who don't know them might make up a story of inspirational and passionate blood. They are the disabled trio. Gyro, leg disabled Do, disabled Lue Duo, kidney deficient man, Kill Dizuo. The Heavens Arena's new killers. They all know Nin. For many rookies who have just reached the 200th floor and don't know Nin, they are very strong. They also targeted John because they were sure that John didn't know Nin. After all, John can't even do 10, how could he be an user? To soothe John's injured heart, John decided to accept their challenge. Both sides suddenly became happy. A newbie has been hooked. ×3. I have to vent well. John thought so. The 2 sides reached a strange agreement. They felt that they had picked a soft persimmon and were very happy. They didn't know that John was not a newbie. John is a veteran stand user. At this time, the 3 of them don't know how many pages of aura are waiting for them. I hope they can be as durable as lovers. By the way, grinding for gold these past few days has been very effective. John got 2 omnipotent cards again in a short time. He opened Teresa's perfume, a magical perfume that can eliminate men's body odor. Of course, there is also a stand, which can be said to be one of the weakest stands in the hunter world. Sex Pistols, there are 6 stands, 6 in 1. The serial numbers on them range from number 1 to N07, except for N04. Guido Mista's stand in Part 5, can change the trajectory of bullets. Growth, precision, and sustainability are all A, but there is no destructive power. The range changes with the range of the gun. However, in the hunter world, it is difficult for gun users to stand out in high-level duels. Unless it is an user with a gun that can clear the field with a very fast rate of fire. However, Sex Pistols also has a special effect, which is a bug that John privately set when making the game. Sex Pistols do not die from bullets. That is to say, John will not die even if he bathes under a Gatling gun. Chapter 37. John's opponent was confirmed to be Kill Daso. A pale-faced man, you could tell at a glance that he didn't know restraint when he was young, staying up all night every day. Now, it is said that he sheds tears of regret whenever he sees X. Later, it is said that he only survived because his hands were broken. He is a member of the despicable disabled combination, the 3 of them squatting at the registration desk on the 200th floor every day, specifically targeting newbies. In order to make the newbies submit, their methods are extremely despicable, using any means necessary. In the original story, in order to fight Killua, they kidnapped Zushi. After receiving Killua's warning of murder, they took the initiative to abstain. Of course, the old birds who hinder newcomers are not just these few. However, they are relatively weak, only coming after the wave of newbies has been harvested. But they are cautious enough, staying on the 200th floor from now until 5 years after the original story begins. They are a perfect example of being afraid of the strong and bullying the weak, using any means to become the floor master. It can be said that they are the Tonpa of the Heavens Arena. However, the little lamb they thought they had targeted is actually a devil in sheep's clothing. Ever since John decided to teach them a lesson, they had no chance of winning. Even 5 years later, John was confident of victory. Although Stone Free is not fully developed yet and is still a kid, as long as it's not against enhancement type non-users, he won't back down from a head-on fight with those experienced non-users. Hehehe, newbie. Just be at ease and become my stepping stone to challenge the floor master. Kildaso's mournful face squeezed out a distorted smile, smiling sinisterly at John's departing back. There are people who directly register for matches as soon as they reach the 200th floor, but it's very rare. Many people gave up after watching 2 matches after reaching the 200th floor. MMP, what is this? What are they doing? Looking at those inexplicably injured people and those bizarre moves, they directly gave up. Playing with snakes, the battles above the 200th floor are fights between gods, and people who don't know and can't understand anything. What? Someone punched a big hole in the concrete arena, enhancement type non-user. How can you play this? Going to the 200th floor is to win honor, not to die. Battles above the 200th floor have video recordings. Under normal circumstances, you will understand your opponent before fighting. There are very few naive youths as pure as John anymore. John arrived at his room. Very good. This is the first time John has stayed in a room of this level. A 50-inch LCD TV screen hangs in the center of the living room, along with the latest high-end computer. There are luxurious decorations on the desk, as well as super large floor-to-ceiling windows, allowing you to have a panoramic view of the entire city. There are also various delicacies and wines filling the cabinets. John casually took some snacks. The taste is very good, with a slight sweetness. If you need anything, you can directly call customer service. The customer service of the Heavens Arena will satisfy the contestants at the fastest speed. Also, the dividends from the betting pool are no less than the bonuses below the 200th floor. Tickets above the 200th floor are very expensive, and the tickets for some experts are even priceless. The betting pool is also very large. The audience present are at least somewhat wealthy, mostly rich people who don't lack money. The matches in the Heavens Arena are broadcast live on TV and computers, and viewers who are not present can also join the official betting pool. However, Kildaso is not strong in the first place, and John was not very dazzling in the early stage because he was hiding his strength. Not many people are paying attention. Even so, the betting pool has accumulated billions of Jenny. John pulled down the curtains, and golden lights filled the room. John lay back on the comfortable big bed. Do-loo-loo-loo-loo. John's phone rang, and John opened his phone. A text message reminder appeared on the display screen. The match will officially begin at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. This is the specific time for John's match against Kildaso tomorrow. John casually ordered some food. More than 20 minutes later, several staff members knocked on John's door. It was the delivery person, very efficient. After eating his fill, John did 20 minutes of pre-sleep exercises and gradually lost consciousness. John, without any sense of tension, fell asleep carefree. As if this match was an insignificant matter. The next day, John woke up normally. John didn't have the bad habit of leaving fatigue to the next day. John and Kildaso slowly walked from the passage. There was only a referee on the arena. A girl wearing the Heavens Arena uniform stood on the commentary stage with a microphone. As the host, her role is very important, and she leads the atmosphere and rhythm of the arena. But I have to admire the editor, he managed to edit John to be very strong. It was hard for him. Although both sides are weak, the audience is still very supportive, and the cheers are very loud. Because John is a newbie, John's odds are very high. Kildaso's odds are 1.x, and John's are 10.x. More than 90% of the audience bet on Kildaso. John also bet all his savings, a super double down, making a fortune silently. John knows that this situation will not happen again in the future, after all, it is the result of so long of hiding his strength. John and Kildaso stood opposite each other on the arena. Both sides are allowed to use weapons. If there are any questions, please raise them. The referee looked at both sides, expressionless. Then, I ask you two to gamble your fame and dignity, and begin the battle. As soon as the referee announced the start, he darted off the stage like a wisp of smoke. Battles of this level were too dangerous to be on the stage for. Just as the start of the match was announced, the audience erupted in thunderous cheers. The big screen also showed a live video of John and Kildaso facing off. Oh! The match has begun. Kildaso stood on the stage without moving, smiling happily at John. He, rookie, you're fast. Now, accept the baptism of a senior. Kiloazaldik walked towards John. That's right, he walked. Kiloazaldik liked to use this trick to put pressure on rookies, making them angry, exposing flaws, and then defeating them. But John was very calm, standing there quietly, his eyes fixed on Kiloazaldik, without any fear. John also moved, walking towards Kiloazaldik. The two walked towards each other in silence. What on earth are Kiloazaldik and John doing? Their distance is constantly shrinking, when will they attack? As expected of a Sky Arena Ace commentator, he immediately set the pace. The audience also became excited. John was unusually wearing a large hood today, covering his forehead. If Kiloazaldik were to lift John's hat now, he would find a green ugly face on John's forehead. That's right, John was currently using Epitaph. Suddenly, John moved, starting to dodge to the left of his body. John had already sensed Kiloazaldik's attack through Epitaph. But nothing happened in front of him. It seems that Kiloazaldik's Nin ability should be of the emission type, that distance. John's Epitaph predicted Kiloazaldik's attack in advance. In the future he saw, John was bound by an unknown force. Kiloazaldik was also very shocked that a kid who couldn't use Nin had dodged his invisible hand. But, tidy witties, weak, tidy witties, weak, dot. Kiloazaldik urged the invisible hand to frantically pursue John. John used Adam's mind reading and Crimson King's Epitaph to predict, and John dodged Kiloazaldik's ghost hand again and again. John approached Kiloazaldik step by step, this feat shocked everyone. Each time, John dodged before the invisible hand arrived. His performance was completely different from before. How could a kid who couldn't even use 10 dodge an attack that could only be seen with Gyo? Looking at the scattered aura around John's body, everyone who could use Nin couldn't understand. Oh? What on earth is John doing? He keeps dodging. Kiloazaldik hasn't moved either. What exactly is happening on the stage? The female commentator couldn't use Nin and couldn't see the means of Nin attacks. Like stand users fighting, many Nin users' battles looked no different from two idiots to ordinary people. The scene was very awkward. John was wandering around frantically at the air. Kiloazaldik had a grim expression at the air. The audience's shouts also stopped, falling into thought. Who am I? Why did I come here? What are these two idiots doing? Seeing that the invisible hand couldn't catch up with John's pace, Kiloazaldik simply retracted the invisible hand. Once John got close, John wouldn't be able to dodge within a certain distance, and John's attack power couldn't kill himself, who had learned 10, in one fell swoop. Kiloazaldik thought so. Like a poisonous snake hiding in the grass, preparing to give the enemy a fatal blow. John also took this opportunity to get close to Kiloazaldik. Kiloazaldik's invisible hand appeared, John didn't notice it at all. Stone free. A blue figure stood in front of John. Kiloazaldik was startled by the sudden appearance of Stone Free. In just a moment of slight daze, Kiloazaldik had already entered Stone Free's firing range. Invisible hand. Kiloazaldik sensed the crisis and fully urged the invisible hand. Stone Free also struck with all its strength. Ora 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 ora. The invisible hand only lasted for a second before collapsing. How could the thin layer of 10 on Kiloazaldik's surface withstand Stone Free's beating? It was almost instantly blown away. John was afraid that Kiloazaldik would be blown away all at once, so he used Stone Free's threads to wrap Kiloazaldik like a silkworm cocoon. This way, he wouldn't have to worry about him flying out of the arena. Yaar yaar days. John pulled down the brim of his hat. Ora 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 ora. After a full 10 seconds of aura, when John unwrapped the cocoon, Kiloazaldik was no longer recognizable as a human. If John hadn't sensed Kiloazaldik's breathing through Stone Free, John himself would have thought that Kiloazaldik had died on the spot. The audience burst into thunderous applause. They didn't know what had happened at all, they only knew that Kiloazaldik was instantly blown away by John. Kiloazaldik's partners, Giddo and Rival, also ran away as if the solace of their feet were greased, completely ignoring the life and death of Kiloazaldik. Chapter 38. Sadaso is seriously injured and unconscious, unable to fight. John wins. The commentator was also cursing in her heart. She didn't see anything, just John dancing on the stage and Sadaso was finished. It was useless. Although she didn't know what happened, it was so strong. John won a large number of fans among the audience with his strength. Of course, after the applause, there were cries. Some people who spent a lot of money betting on Seidaso to win were out of luck and lost all their savings. Like Seidaso's good buddies, Jidu and Libeduo, they bet all their savings since they learned that John couldn't use Nin. Now, if there weren't still benefits on the 200th floor, they wouldn't even be able to afford underwear. They lost all their savings from these years. Some families are happy and some are sad. As for those hotheads who insisted on betting on John and some speculators, they made a lot of money. This is a rare tenfold interest rate. Some other veterans who were preparing to challenge John after Seidaso also stopped mentioning the competition. They didn't expect this kid who can't even use Nin to be so strong. The punches that knocked out Seidaso were at the level of an enhancer. Although some veteran fighters who were new assassins knew how powerful John was and would not come to challenge him, John became even more popular. Many Nin users saw that John couldn't use N, so they bet on Seidaso. Now they all want to hire Seidaso and John to take revenge. It's hard to say whether Seidaso will be able to get out of the hospital this year. In fact, John took advantage of epitaph and mind reading. In terms of real strength, John can't beat them. Especially Libeduo, John hasn't thought of any other solution to his ultimate move besides King Crimson's time erasure. John didn't want to stay any longer, jumped off the stage, and walked away. Leaving the audience dumbfounded. You don't explain, and as a winner, aren't you going to say something? In fact, it's not John's fault, because John found that the rewards after defeating the users are really great. He opened the training subspace, Hell Climbing Pillars, which is the training ground that Joseph Joestar struggled in back then. This training greatly improves the mastery of ripple energy. Not only that, but he also rewarded a lot of gold coins. Adding the daily training tasks from the past few days, John has enough gold coins to buy a universal card again. Based on the Buddhist mentality that the day you choose is the auspicious day, and all other days are unlucky days, John drew a card again. John opened the card. John was shocked. Now John's heart is very complicated, with surprise and some pain. This card is not a stand card, it can only be regarded as an auxiliary card of a certain stand. This is an ability of the stand user himself in the original Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. This stand user's combat power is not very good, but he still left an unforgettable impression in the hearts of Jojo fans. That's right, this card is Lover's Body. Max resistance to blows. Known as the Iron Lover, the lover in the plastic world. Lover did not use a stand, and relied on his flesh and blood to withstand Platinum Star's 7 pages of aura, which is invincible in basic attacks, and still did not die. His body strength is conceivable. Terrifying. Looking at the whole world, only Father Pucci's face in the Annihilation Sea can compare with it. After experiencing this battle, John has another 90 days of rest. But John didn't dare to continue to be reckless. The next opponent is unlikely to be a trash like Seidaso. John couldn't bring himself to find newcomers. John decided to go back to his room first and then make a decision. In the corridor, a burly man leaned against the wall looking at his phone. John couldn't help but glance at him. There are very few people in this corridor, and not many people come here. Maybe it's a newcomer who just arrived on the 200th floor. John didn't pay much attention and turned his eyes away. It's very impolite to keep staring at other people. Hi, man. John's body trembled. This voice is so familiar. Could it be? John looked at the burly man leaning against the wall. The man looked at John with a seemingly meaningful look, and then hammered his fist twice. This action is very similar to Van. John felt his chrysanthemum tighten and summoned Stone Free for self-defense. You lost money and came to collect debts, right? John guessed. Humph, no, don't pretend, you should know me. The man smiled and took 2 steps closer to John. I have no idea what you are going to do, don't come over. A cold sweat ran down John's face. John couldn't help but swallow. John's eyes slanted, and with his extraordinary eyesight, John saw the post that he was watching on his phone. Rich and handsome roommate and goddess did not return all night. After returning, I pulled down the rich and handsome roommate's pants and finally tasted the goddess's taste. A certain man is too handsome. On the day of freshman registration, his roommate did this to him. Confirmed. The screen went black, and John couldn't see any more content. Hiss, John gasped. He took 2 steps back without hesitation, preparing to escape. You should know who I am, right? You should also know what I want to do. It took me a long time to find your room. The air was constantly torn apart, and the roar was endless. The turbulent airflow generated by the punch spread out, making John's face ache. It alarmed the people in the next room. The door was opened. Damn it, are you going to let people rest? A sleepy-eyed person poked his head out. Seeing the air shock caused by Stone Free and the burly man's terrifying punches, he was silent. Sorry, I disturbed you. He closed the door with lightning speed as if nothing had happened, and would not open it no matter what. This is a duel of monsters that they cannot interfere with. John was a little irritable. From the beginning of the attack, his rhythm was slowly controlled by the man on the opposite side. This is very dangerous. And the man doesn't seem to have used all his strength. He will lose. John's heart produced this feeling for no reason. He can run away with King Crimson, but being blocked at the door is too humiliating. At this moment, a terrifying aura appeared on the burly man's body. Stone Free was knocked away all of a sudden. Killing intent, there is no doubt that this is a pure, terrifying killing intent. Although John was not so frightened that he couldn't move, his body movements still became slow. He will die. This is Fa, a kind of Nin ability. If John's epitaph hadn't predicted that he wouldn't die in the next 5 seconds, he would have run away long ago. The burly man bent his legs and stood firmly on the floor like a stone pillar inserted into the foundation. He clenched his hands into claws and placed them in front of his chest. A golden light burst out from his eyes. A terrifying aura swept through the entire floor. Many players who were still in the room and didn't care about what was happening outside were also frightened and gasped for breath. John's back was already against the wall more than 10 meters away. This is a biological instinct's fear of death. Now, can you listen to me carefully? He looked at John with those golden eyes. John seemed to recall the sense of powerlessness when facing the barrow giant crocodile back then. No, it's a little different. John felt that if he moved again, he would be smashed into pieces by the burly man's fist. I am Wilhelm, the landlord of the 236th floor. I am also the teacher who is entrusted by the association to teach Yunnan. Chapter 39. My name is Wilhelm, and I am the master of the Heavens Arena, a powerhouse of a fighter. The association has entrusted me with teaching a newly minted hunter the ability of Nin. Originally, I wouldn't have agreed, but that kid Robson came to me with a request and offered such a high price that I reluctantly accepted. Actually, the main reason is that Robson said this kid is very special. He said this kid might be able to inherit my mantle. I became interested, but I didn't see anything special about him. His physical fitness is not bad, but definitely not 1 in a million. In the battle with the Zaldik family's kid, he couldn't hold back, as expected. That was a humanoid Nin beast. Could this be the special thing Robson was talking about? Today, I'm betting on John to win. It is said that Robson has also put his entire fortune on John, so it seems that this Nin beast is not so simple. As expected, that Nin beast is very powerful, with top-notch speed and strength. This is a diamond in the rough, an uncut gem. Fortunately, the big sister Bisky isn't here. I want him to become my disciple. I'll show her that I can also teach a good disciple. Wilhelm made up his mind. John was silent. In John's room, John and Wilhelm sat facing each other. I didn't expect that this muscle-bound bro was his teacher, and also the master of the Heavens Arena. No wonder he was able to withstand Stone Free's aura for so long. You have to know that John's Stone Free's destructive power is now completely comparable to a seasoned and enhanced user's basic attack. Wilhelm took out an exquisite iron box from his pocket. He reached in with his fingers and pinched out a cigar. Judging from your appearance, you already know about Nin, right? Wilhelm snapped his fingers, and a wisp of flame sprang from his fingertips, lighting the cigar. This is a kind of application of Nin. John nodded, still very puzzled as to why Wilhelm dared to let John, who had not learned Nin, accept the baptism. But John was still very much looking forward to learning Nin. Nin, a local specialty. If you come to the hunter world and don't learn Nin, you'd be embarrassed to say you've been to the hunter world. You're curious, right, why I didn't come to you before the baptism on the 200th floor. Saying that, he took a deep puff of the cigar and then comfortably exhaled a smoke ring. Originally, I planned to teach Yunnan before you received the baptism. But... Saying that, he put a DVD into the player. This was the scene of John's duel with Killua. Suddenly, Wilhelm pressed a button, and the picture stopped. This was the moment when John summoned Stone Free. Stone Free only appeared for less than a second. That kid Robson has been telling me that you are special, but he didn't tell me the reason. Now I know. Pthahaha, you kid have earned me a fortune. Wilhelm laughed. Learning Nen can be done with anyone, but if you want to be my disciple, you might die. Wilhelm changed his frivolous expression and looked at John seriously. Just so you know, many people have asked to be my apprentice, but I don't have a single disciple. Everyone died within a week of becoming a disciple. So, what is your choice? Wilhelm patted John on the shoulder and walked behind John, waiting for John's reply. Coach, oh no, master, I want to learn Nen. Wilhelm could tell at a glance that he was an enhancer. John now has a very high chance of escaping from an enhancer. There was nothing to hesitate about. Lover's body, as long as it's not a super destructive punch, John can still withstand a few basic attacks. Plus stone freeze thread like damage reduction, and time erasure to run away, it's almost impossible for an enhancer to kill John. Wilhelm took John to his room, turned around, and began to introduce his school. As a floor master, he could create his own school and open training classes. Next, I will open your aura nodes and release your aura. Wilhelm sat down cross-legged and placed one hand on John's shoulder. I'm counting on you. Acting master. This is too dangerous. A young man with glasses, about 16 or 17 years old, shouted at Wilhelm. This young man was not Wilhelm's disciple, but the disciple of Wilhelm's friend, who was staying with Wilhelm these days to learn Nen. Gunji, it doesn't matter. If he dies like this, then it means that's all he is. I believe in him. But... no buts. Using other experts to use their aura to impact and open one's aura nodes is a quick way to get started with Nen practice. But it is very dangerous. Once you fail to learn Ten quickly, the person whose aura nodes are forcibly opened will die due to the loss of spiritual energy, which is very dangerous. If you use other methods to slowly practice and sense the aura in your body through meditation, you can also awaken Nen, but it requires great perseverance. It will take a while to awaken Nen. Chairman Netero used this method to open the Hyakushiki cannon in his 60s. There is also a method involving some strange items and elixirs, but these things are hard to come by. But John didn't know this, he didn't know the dangers of opening the aura nodes. John was directly opened by Wilhelm, and John was instantly enveloped in a transparent aura. Wilhelm believed that John could awaken such a powerful Nen beast like Stone Free, so his willpower must be very strong. Learning Ten would be a matter of minutes. He didn't want to waste several weeks teaching John how to open the aura nodes. If it's him, it's definitely no problem. Show him, John. John summoned Stone Free, and the young man named Gunji stopped talking instantly. John, take off your clothes. Hey! This is a necessary condition for forcibly opening the aura nodes, Wilhelm explained. John looked at Wilhelm suspiciously. But he honestly took off his coat. You don't have to take everything off. You can leave your underwear on. Wilhelm supported his forehead. Seeing John wanting to take off all his clothes, he couldn't help but remind him. With one hand on the back of John's neck, a heat flow appeared in John's body, and his whole body became hot. Suddenly, John felt a great force. Ah, yay, yay, ah. John couldn't help but shout. Coming back to his senses, John found that his whole body was emitting white aura. Like water vapor, it spewed out from John's body. Stand still and calm your mind. Close your eyes and imagine the aura like blood, circulating in your body. From the top of your head, let the aura flow to your arms and then to your feet. Then let these flowing auras slowly stop. Imagine these flowing auras, surrounding your body, slowly appearing. It took John 8 minutes to stabilize his aura, barely completing 10. This result was average, neither good nor bad. You should know that Gon and Killua mastered 10 almost instantly under the explanation of their Nen teacher. Now the aura seemed like mucus, enveloping John's whole body. This is 10. 10 is to stabilize the aura that is scurrying around the body, which can form a thin film outside the body. 10 can resist Nen attacks. 10, Zetsu, Ren, and Hatsu are collectively known as the 4 major principles of Nen. 10 is one of the 4 major principles of Nen and is the foundation of the foundation. Only by learning 10 can you have the ability to deal with Nen users. A dark killing intent emanated from Wilhelm's body. John's entire body was shrouded in this dark and intense killing intent. A malicious thought full of killing intent swept through the entire room. Hiss! John instantly took a defensive stance. The awkward feeling just now is gone, and the movements don't have the kind of sluggishness they did just now. Wilhelm grinned, and suddenly Wilhelm burst out with an even deeper killing intent. Like fireworks erupting in the dark night. Even the players in other rooms couldn't help but shiver. John's 10 also became intermittent, and he couldn't maintain it. Ha ha ha, kid, you're still too tender. Wilhelm put away his malicious aura. Next, we will train the strength of your 10. You must maintain 10 at all times, and only by maintaining 10 in battle can you proceed to the next match. Let's not talk about that for now. Wilhelm took out a glass of plain water from the cupboard and then put a leaf on it. The most mainstream non-detection method now is the water divination created by the Shinjin Ryu. Wilhelm put his hand on the water glass, and the aura on his hand gradually increased and flowed to the water glass. The water suddenly overflowed from the glass and dripped on the table. Wilhelm gestured to John with his eyes. John also followed suit, gathering Nen in his hand and placing it on the water glass. The curled leaf on the water glass suddenly straightened and emitted a faint golden electric light, and then there was no change. It seems to be a specialization type Nen ability. Wilhelm stroked his chin. Chapter 40. Enhancement type Nen abilities will cause the water in the cup to overflow. Transformation type Nen abilities will change the taste of the water in the cup, with different people producing different tastes. It is said that someone's water tasted like high-end red wine, leading to immediate wealth. Conjuration type Nen abilities will cause the water in the cup to crystallize. Emission type Nen abilities will change the color of the water. Rumor has it that someone's water in their cup turned into a colorful rainbow. Then, they teamed up with someone who could turn water into high-end red wine flavor to create new rainbow-colored red wine, which now sells for a super expensive price. Manipulation type Nen abilities do not affect the water but rather the leaf on the water. The leaf usually moves its position. Any Nen ability that does not conform to the above manifestations mostly belongs to the specialization type. For example, Neferpitu's Nen can directly wither the leaves in the cup. Kurapika in his Scarlet Eyes mode is also a specialist. After a brief introduction to the basic system of Nen abilities, John was sent home. It was already evening, and Wilhelm was embarrassed to disturb John's development. John also had no intention of continuing to listen to Wilhelm's explanation. Just when John had just learned Nen abilities, the system in his mind resurrected. Receiving new ability system loading. It took a full 10 minutes to complete the update. John didn't notice any changes. However, because the system successfully analyzed the essence of Nen abilities, it rewarded John with a substitute card and 2 universal cards. John didn't dare to draw cards in front of an old fox like Wilhelm, fearing that he wouldn't be able to control his emotions and would reveal something. After all, when the loading was completed, Wilhelm was still suppressing John with malicious Nen. John was also distracted by the sudden prompt from the system and failed to maintain his Ren, which was defeated by Wilhelm. It would be too strange for someone who had just been defeated to suddenly laugh. In fact, Wilhelm had already seen John's excitement, but he didn't care. After all, John had just learned Nen abilities, and excitement was understandable. John endured until Wilhelm let him go back before he breathed a sigh of relief. He closed the door, opened the window, and released the thick second-hand smoke left by Wilhelm. It must be said that the cigar was strong enough. It hadn't dissipated after so long. In his previous life, John didn't smoke either. Now, John is still a child, and even if he went into a convenience store, no one would sell it to him, so John is now very resistant to the smell of smoke. It seems that a blind man has discovered another key point. How could Togashi old thief draw such troublesome things? As expected, I still think too much. After the smell of smoke initially dissipated, John skillfully opened the system interface. This time, the system gave John a surprise. John had just learned Nen, and after all, John wasn't a genius like Gon and Killua. It was still unknown to what extent he could learn in just a few days. There was video recording of John's duel with Seidaso. Based on this, other contestants could roughly judge Stone Free's range and power. People who challenge John later will probably do their homework and won't be as careless as Seidaso. John didn't want to expose King Crimson's time erasure. As long as he dared to expose time erasure, John had no doubt that Crollo would come to investigate within a week. Now that he has a few more cards, John will have more choices for the upcoming battles. John calmed down, adjusted his breathing, and opened the substitute card. A 7-colored light flashed, and a black figure gradually appeared in the card. An ugly humanoid creature wearing glasses. Stand, man in the mirror. Destructive power, C. Speed, C. Range, B. The mirror world only has a range of a few hundred meters. Precision, C. Growth potential, E. Skill introduction, can pull people who have been approved by the host into the mirror world. Beings in the real world cannot attack beings that have been pulled into the mirror world. This stand, whether in terms of destructive power or speed, is only slightly better than Pearl Jam and is also the lowest of the low. But this ability is very buggy. In the original work, Man in the Mirror's host was Illuso, a member of the La Squadra Esicosiani. His performance was quite outstanding. Man in the Mirror can pull people in without pulling in their stands, and things like viruses can also be isolated outside the mirror world. Man in the Mirror also has a privilege in the mirror world, only Man in the Mirror can move things in the mirror world. However, if things in the real world change, things in the mirror world will also change in conjunction. This stand, when paired with King Crimson, is simply invincible and can be called a running artifact. Moreover, as long as he hides in the mirror world, no one can kill John. Damn it, I'm invincible again. John casually grabbed some desserts and threw in a few pearl jams to enhance the flavor. He took a bite. Ah! Perfect. Then John's car overturned. John's eyes suddenly felt a surge. Tears flowed like a spring, unable to stop. John's pants were wet. John! Pearl Jam is so terrifying. Then he casually opened the 2 universal cards. John wasn't so optimistic about his luck, anyway, he had Man in the Mirror as a guarantee. If you draw a stand, there will be a 7-colored light effect. Ordinary item cards don't have that. A 7-colored light flashed, unexpectedly. John calmly looked at the glowing stand card. Stand name, Emperor. Destructive power, B. Speed, B. Range, B. Persistence, C. Precision, E. Growth potential, E. The original host was Hall Horse, a man who looked like an American Western cowboy. The stand itself is a gun, and the bullets are also part of the stand. It has infinite bullets and can arbitrarily change the trajectory of his bullets. Corresponding to the Emperor in the tarot cards, even the overbearing Dio crawled under Hall Horse's crotch. However, the stand ability overlaps too much with Sex Pistols and can be said to be a useless stand. Useless to eat, regrettable to discard. As expected, I still think too much. How could a non-chief like me explode with a good stand again? I've really been too inflated lately, John blamed himself. He actually thought he had escaped from non-Europe. It seems that I need to wake up. John had experienced great storms and thought he could reach a high state of calmness. A white light flashed, an item card. Pillar Man Bloodline, can transform the body into the Pillar Man Bloodline, immortal, possessing super vitality and strength. Afraid of the sun and ripple energy. John was stunned. Chapter 41. Leaving behind mediocrity and embracing fortune starts today. I, John, am indeed blessed, like a Pillar Man. A superior being, not like those flawed vampires. They don't die when exposed to sunlight, they only turn to stone. Moreover, their absorption of life energy is incredibly strong. They can digest living organisms with their cellular digestive fluids, converting them into nutrients. Having the bloodline of a Pillar Man is like having a second life. If you collect the Aya Stone and the Stone Mask, you can become the ultimate life form. This is truly an unsolvable existence. If not for the Earth's will rejecting the ultimate life form, Joseph's strong luck, and Kars being an antique who didn't have time to learn modern physics, there wouldn't have been a sequel. Even until the 6th part, before the universe reset, Kars was still alive in space, as Earth's satellite. Conventional means cannot kill the ultimate life form. Even the lower tier Pillar Men cannot be killed by ordinary means. As long as the brain isn't completely destroyed, they can revive. However, John doesn't plan to use the Pillar Man bloodline now, because the limitations are too great. Once used, he'd have to say goodbye to the sun. John can't stand living in darkness all the time. Moreover, Pillar Men can't use ripple energy. Once the Pillar Man bloodline is used, ripple is essentially useless. Ripple is still very useful, so John decides to remain human for now. After the draw, John decided to go to sleep. John, learning 10? Is it necessary to be so excited? These are just the basics. Wilhelm said earnestly. How could John sleep after drawing something so good? John had insomnia and couldn't sleep all night. Fortunately, with Nin ability and ripple energy, John wasn't too exhausted. He could barely keep up with Wilhelm's training plan. In general, it can be described as getting beaten, training, getting beaten, training, getting beaten. Even John, who possesses the lover's body, was knocked unconscious by Wilhelm multiple times. This is what it means, no wonder the previous senior brothers either died or fled. According to him, it's to train the disciples' resistance to blows, to have John look at his fist and dodge it. But Wilhelm is from the Shinjin Ryu style, and his aura has no fluctuations when he throws a punch. This isn't the most despairing part, the founder of Shinjin Ryu, Chairman Netero, has the fastest fist in the world. Although Wilhelm's fist speed isn't that fast, it's still terrifying. Wilhelm also forbade John from using Stone Free. John can't even see Wilhelm's fist now. It's really sad. Now John is tied to a rope pulling an old tire. Wilhelm sits on the tire, wielding a whip. John's human-powered vehicle is officially online. Every day, running from the Heavens Arena, that is, from the city center to the suburbs, even by car, it takes an hour. Speed. Are you a turtle? With a snap, the whip struck John's body. Without Nin added, John's 10 can easily block it. But not being injured doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, using Nin to defend against attacks, but pain cannot be defended against. Maintaining 10 requires a calm mind. John suddenly couldn't maintain 10, and the whip began to lash out again. Wilhelm's eyes emitted a faint golden light. Looking at Wilhelm's appearance, John knew why there was only him left in the Tendu Shinjin Ryu. This kind of training would ruin anyone. If it weren't for ripple energy to recover, and pearl fruit jam to treat hidden injuries at night, John would probably have collapsed too. After preliminary experiments, it was discovered that John's Nin leans towards enhancement. Summoning King Crimson's Nin ability still leans towards enhancement, but if he summons Stone Free's Nin ability, it leans towards manipulation. That is to say, Nin ability can amplify stand abilities. Not only that, the strength of the Stone Free threads injected with Nin has greatly increased. Now Stone Free's threads can withstand the weight of a small car, which means John can now cosplay Spider-Man. Experiencing the exclusive joy of Hermit Purple and Emerald Splash. Ripple energy and Nin ability can also complement each other, and John's strength has risen to another level. Now John feels that his Nin enhanced ripple can already be compared to Jonathan Joestar in his peak state. Wilhelm only taught John some small techniques, he didn't even see any ultimate moves. The days are getting closer, and the battle preparation time is constantly decreasing. John isn't a floor master, he has to fight once every 90 days. John hasn't finished learning Nin abilities yet, and he still wants to enjoy the free service of the 200th floor. So, before the battle preparation time ended, John once again applied for a battle with the customer service lady. John immediately saw several acquaintances, the disabled trio, oh no, now it's the disabled duo. They saw. The customer service lady immediately informed John that someone had applied for a battle that day. That person is called Siliu, nicknamed the Fire Elf, 32 years old, 1.79 meters tall, with large tattoos on his face. He currently maintains a record of 3 wins and 0 losses and is a hot contestant. Siliu only went to the 200th floor last year and has not yet suffered a defeat. In the eyes of the audience, he is a dark horse and a strong man with the potential to challenge the floor master. John has only fought one match above the 200th floor, which was the one against Killua. Unexpectedly, he immediately made a name for himself, and now John is also very popular. The match is in 2 days. Unlike the last time, this time the match has a completely different level of attention, and this time the publicity is very strong. Dark Horse vs. Dark Horse, Fire Elf vs. Strange Fist Master, who will ultimately win? Another clickbait title. John helplessly looked at the promotion on his phone. Although Siliu is already in his 30s, he is still considered young among the contestants on the 200th floor of the Heavens Arena, whose average age is 47, excluding Chairman Netero, so it is not an exaggeration to call him a dark horse. Unlike the sparse audience last time, the tickets for the battle between John and Siliu this time were also sold out in 5 hours. John also went to learn about Siliu, and Siliu's nickname immediately revealed his ability. Without looking, he knew that Siliu must be a transmutation Nin user, and his attack method should be fire. Close combat might be disadvantageous, after all, the threads are not fireproof. King Crimson is too big of a target, so he doesn't dare to use it. It's a pity John doesn't have Magician's Red, otherwise, he'd let him see what a real ghost fire boy is. John thought maliciously. But he just doesn't know what his physical skills are like. Siliu, who was still training, also received a notice and immediately began to collect John's information. Watching John's previous battle videos to think of countermeasures. At the same time, John, who had just finished Wilhelm's training, returned to his room. How could he have time to collect information on his opponent to rest? Slumped on the sofa, he turned on the huge LCD TV right in front of him. John has recently become obsessed with a silly drama, and he has to take time to watch it every day when he comes back. He vaguely remembered it was one night more than 10 days ago. A certain black young man, who was bullied in his clan, later entered Dongshan University and embarked on the peak of his life. Humph, how could I, John, watch such trashy plot dramas? So fragrant. A pearl fruit jam flew into the fried chicken in John's hand. John bit into it, the oil juice overflowing, so fragrant. Then he took a sip of iced cola. Ah, comfortable. The invincible John gave up after watching his opponent Siliu's battle videos. Siliu's battle videos are not as good as silly dramas. Chapter 42. The match arrived as scheduled, and John finally went to study Sirio's combat videos. Sirio's main attack method is spraying flames. The worst instance directly turned the entire arena into a fire pit, leaving his opponent with severe burns. In the hunter world, underestimating unfamiliar Nen users can be fatal. Nen abilities are bizarre and unpredictable, and when combined with favorable terrain and other factors, they can produce unexpected effects. Sirio's nickname is the Flame Sprite, but who knows what other special skills he possesses. He might just transform into a clicking kid once he's on the field. Isn't it common knowledge that there are 9 warlords of the sea? Back then, the Ant King thought Netero's ultimate move was the Zero Hand, only to be coughed to a standstill by the poor man's Rose, a city scheme. John specifically bought some fire-resistant materials to make clothes, though he wasn't really expecting much from clothes bought from a discount site. But John took a lighter and burned it slightly, and the clothes spontaneously combusted. Spontaneously combusted. John immediately gave it a negative review. MMP, fireproof clothing spontaneously combusted, what a joke. Helpless, John ordered a set of genuine fireproof clothing from an official website. It seemed he couldn't save this expense after all. Finally, the day of the match arrived. John wasn't in a good mood. This time, John's odds were very low, and Sirio's weren't high either. Investing money with odds of just over 1 wouldn't earn much. John was too lazy to bet. Inside the arena, the audience was noisy and excited, all looking forward to the battle between John and Sirio. Before the fighters entered, the commentator briefly introduced John and Sirio's situations and records, warming up the atmosphere and leading the hype. Sirio, nicknamed the Flame Sprite, has 3 wins and 0 losses. All of his opponents have suffered severe burns, and none have been discharged from the hospital yet. As a promising newcomer poised to challenge for a floor master position, he's a truly powerful contender. Next, please welcome Sirio. A disheveled young man walked out of the tunnel, appearing to be only in his early 20s. His face was covered in black tattoos, and his expression was solemn and respectful, looking straight ahead without joy or sorrow. He wore all black, and his hair was tied with sharp blades. Sirio slowly walked onto the arena, and the audience's shouts were deafening. Please welcome John. John walked out of the tunnel on the other side, and the audience erupted again. Compared to Sirio, John was dressed much more flamboyantly. He wore a custom-made, pure white, fireproof isolation jacket, and a thick hood was tightly wrapped with fireproof fabric. The most amazing thing was that John had 2 red fire extinguishers strapped to his back, clearly prepared. Sirio's teeth ached just looking at it. He definitely had a MMP, he wanted to say in his heart. John pulled down the brim of his hat. He wasn't wearing the hat to look cool, but to block the passive effect of Crimson King's epitaph, which would cause an ugly green face to appear on his forehead. He really didn't know how Diavolo had endured having such a green thing on his head for so long. The scariest thing was that he never wore a hat. What does this mean? To live a good life, you have to wear something green on your head? The referee began the usual instructions, then gestured, and the match began. Of course, the referee immediately ran off the stage. Staying on the stage was courting death. The battle began, but neither side moved, simply releasing their aura and observing the opponent's weaknesses. Sirio's hands instantly spewed out a stream of flames, directly rushing towards John. John could feel the heatwave from the flames even from a distance. John easily dodged Sirio's attack because he had foreseen it in advance. But the real show was yet to come. Sirio's flames were significantly different from natural fire. Natural fire is easily extinguished, but Sirio's flames are powered by his nin. That meant that if Sirio didn't release his nin ability, the fire could burn for over an hour. Every one of Sirio's attacks was meaningful. Hitting the opponent was best, but even if he missed, he could create a favorable environment. After dodging Sirio's several flame sprays, John also realized Sirio's intention. The fire grew larger and larger, and the places where John could stand became fewer and fewer. Although John was wearing a fireproof jacket, the air was still scorching. John inhaled the hot air, and his body temperature rose, making him much weaker than before. But John had fire extinguishers. Although this fire was impressive, it still hadn't bent the laws of physics to its will. In fact, compared to natural fire, Sirio's fire simply replaced the combustible material with highly efficient nin. In other words, this fire also needed an accelerant. Simply put, Sirio's fire would also be extinguished if the air was cut off. John instantly cleared the field, and the flames on the arena were suppressed by John's fire extinguishers. Everything was within John's expectations. Sirio's attack not only failed to change the environment but also wasted a lot of energy. The fire extinguishers were used up, and John didn't want to face Sirio's sea of fire again. Relying on his fireproof jacket, John began charging towards Sirio. This series of actions excited the audience, but John didn't have time to care. Now John just wanted to pull Sirio into his attack range and then let stone-free aura him. No one can refuse an aura, even if the opponent has a muta. There's nothing that an aura can't solve, and if there is, then there will be two. This was the safest way. But Sirio wasn't a pushover either. He was only making some disruptive attacks on John. John knew that in the previous battle against Sasso, a lot of information about Stone-Free had been revealed. Sirio must have already thought of a countermeasure, and charging over now might just fall into Sirio's trap. But John had no choice, there were no more fire extinguishers. Now he could only go all out, which was also a testament to his confidence in Stone-Free. Watching John approach step by step, Sirio showed a happy smile. Kakakudori. Sirio had considered the situation where his long-range flame spray would be ineffective and John would close in before the match. Sirio suddenly put his hands together, closed his eyes, and looked like he was waiting to die. But John's alarm bells were ringing, and a sense of crisis surged into his heart. Epitaph. John activated Epitaph again. Fire began to rise behind Sirio, and layers of sparks coalesced into a ball, like a halo of Buddha behind Sirio. Then, the layers of flames began to envelop Sirio, forming a flaming armor. Fortunately, the flames didn't envelop him quickly enough, and John took the opportunity to kick Sirio in the stomach. Sirio flew backward and gagged. John didn't have time to deliver an aura barrage, so he just kicked him. The attack range of the foot is longer than that of the hand, and the strength of the foot is twice that of the hand. When a combo is not possible, using the foot is undoubtedly very cost-effective. But John's foot was still hit by Sirio. Sirio's combat skills were evident at the moment John kicked him. He arched his body and fell backward, minimizing the damage Stone-Free did to him. He also grabbed Stone-Free's foot with his hand while being kicked to counterattack. Scorched marks instantly appeared on John's calf. John immediately retracted Stone-Free, and only summoned Stone-Free again after the burning stopped. John looked solemn, Sirio was strong. Warm reminder, the website is about to be, which may cause the loss of reading progress. Please save bookshelf and reading records in time, it is recommended to save screenshots. We apologize for the inconvenience. Sirio had already completed the full coverage of the flame armor. The current Sirio was like a hedgehog, and John had no way to deal with him for a while. Ha ha ha, kid, you are very strong. You have trained your nin to this level in such a short period of time. If you hadn't met me, you might have been able to move forward, but you met me. I originally planned to use this move to deal with the landlord, but now you get to enjoy it in advance. Feel lucky. Its name is Blazing Fire Armor. Sirio said with a face full of pride. Sirio's emotions would become very unstable before the victory of the battle. He would gesticulate wildly, completely without the calm and composure he had at the beginning of the match. John made a grasping motion, and a tomato instantly appeared out of thin air in his hand. That's right, it was a cherry tomato. Then John threw his hand towards his mouth. No one saw what John threw into his mouth. John's body instantly underwent a change, and tears welled up in John's eyes. The dead skin burned on John's feet instantly fell off, and new flesh grew. What the hell did you eat? Sirio was stunned. Wilhelm also wanted to ask John what kind of magic medicine he had thrown into his mouth. What kind of miraculous healing effect was this? John did not answer. Sirio felt like an idiot. Sirio was a little irritable and scratched his neck. Sirio said in a gloomy and deep voice, "It's all healed. How are you going to block it next?" Sirio was angry, and began to spew out balls of flame from his hands again. John didn't dare to go head-to-head again. The cherry tomato was not a panacea. The healing of the cherry tomato still followed the laws of nature, and would not restore without cost in violation of the law of conservation of matter. The injuries that John recovered with the cherry tomato consumed the fat that John had accumulated before. John had very little fat left due to Wilhelm's devil training, and he would die if he recovered again. I can only dodge it, John thought. But how could Sirio let John get his wish? Balls of flame turned into the shape of birds in the air and flew towards John. This move is very similar to Morel's smoke machine gun soldier. However, the range and quantity are far inferior to Morel, but the destructive power of the flame itself far exceeds smoke. Why do you think I'm called the flame spirit instead of the arsonist? I can use flames to create elemental constructs. Your fireproof coat can't block your face. Bastard! The flexibility of the flames was greatly increased, and for a time the firebirds surrounded John. Is this a dead end? John couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Calm down, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, John used Father Pucci's method of counting prime numbers to calm himself down. The firebirds moved, and in an instant all the firebirds rushed towards John. At the same time, John also opened his eyes, without any panic. Calm, there was only calmness on John's face. He opened his hands, as if giving up resistance. Sirio sneered disdainfully, giving up resistance. John smiled happily, he had already thought of a way. Next is the moment to witness a miracle. The flames were right in front of him, and the high-temperature airflow in front of the scorching flames had already hit John's face. But John still didn't see any panic. He reached into his clothes and rummaged around. Stop bluffing. How far are you going to bluff? How is John going to solve this? Is he going to be buried in the sea of fire? The commentator lady said with a curious tone. In the instant before the flames attacked John, John snapped his fingers. Instantly all the firebirds disappeared. The whole place was silent all of a sudden, and no one knew what had happened. The commentator lady also opened her mouth wide and couldn't make a sound. No, impossible. What means did you use? How could all my firebirds disappear? What exactly happened? The commentator girl also asked the audience's questions. Sirio couldn't accept the fact that his ultimate move had been cracked all of a sudden. His voice was out of tune. Guess, as a magician, how could I tell you my magic tricks? Although Sirio was very angry, he managed to calm down. Without figuring out how the firebirds disappeared just now, Sirio didn't dare to waste his energy to attack rashly. Anyway, there is still flame armor, so don't panic for the time being. Little did he know that John had already met someone who claimed to have invincible defense before. Me, John, specialize in invincible defense. There is no lake here, so there is no way to replicate the last method of breaking the game. Sirio's firebirds reminded John, and John had already figured out a way to deal with Sirio. Speaking of Jojo's bizarre adventure, besides Yellow Temperance, there is also a person who claims to have invincible defense. One ice, one fire, interesting. That's right, it's Guido Mista from Vento Oreo, who often encounters people who claim to have invincible defense. Whether it's White Album or Kraft's work, they are all very durable stands. Sirio's ability is different from White Album. Sirio does not have White Album's powerful physical defense of ice armor, but has the high-temperature counter-armor brought by flames. Of course, it is also different from Kraft's work's pure defense. Sirio's flame attack power is much stronger. John opened the game system and replaced the stand in the card slot. Now in John's stand card slot, Stone Free, King Crimson, Man in the Mirror, Emperor, Sex Pistols. Then let's begin. John raised his hands, and a pistol appeared in John's hand. Bang, 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 John fired several shots in a row. Sirio's fire armor seemed to be conscious, and autonomously converged towards the position where the bullets were flying. Sirio's fire armor, like Gaara's sand, can autonomously defend against enemies. The flames of this thickness can melt metal. Bullets are useless. Sirio thought calmly. That is to say, the places with weak thickness cannot do it. The successor of gun kata, Kono Jonde. John pointed his finger at himself and made a dio pose. Then he made a Giorno pose. You are already dead. Suddenly, all the bullets that were about to fly to Sirio's head turned. The bullets filled all directions of Sirio. What are you going to do in this situation? John said confidently. Sirio was bleeding profusely for a while, but he didn't die. This was still the result of John's kindness in using sex pistols to reduce the bullet impact on the vital parts, so Sirio didn't die. Sirio can't get up again. John wins. Chapter 43. John had won. Sirio lay defeated in a pool of blood, as the audience roared with excitement. The audience at the Sky Arena was very well mannered. Those who had bet on Sirio and lost money didn't curse, but cheered the rise of a new star. As expected of the Sky Arena above the 200th floor, the audience present didn't care about such small amounts of money. It was like buying flowers for a host at a host club, merely a form of support. Winning or losing money was actually irrelevant. Far away in your new city, Robson and several others were watching the Sky Arena broadcast together. After the victory, John didn't strike a pose, but immediately went off stage and returned to his room, wolfing down some food he had prepared in advance. Using pearl jam without additional food had taken too much out of John. He couldn't help but eat something to replenish his energy. John hadn't been eating for long when Wilhelm and Jung came to his door. Wilhelm had bet a large sum of money on John. Although the odds weren't high, he still made a profit. John finally understood why his odds were so low. You're really something, kid. I was worried about you when he used his flame armor. John rolled his eyes. You were probably just worried about your money. Wilhelm laughed heartily, not taking the words to heart at all. What was that magic trick you did? Wilhelm asked with a curious expression. Consider it mine an ability. Wilhelm didn't ask further upon hearing it was an ability. This was an unwritten rule in the non-user community. Battles between non-users are mostly intelligence wars. Mastering the opponent's information allows you to make targeted plans. It concerns the lives of non-users. Either you can tell what type it is at a glance like Wilhelm, so it doesn't matter, or you basically don't tell others about your ability like Hisoka. In fact, John's non ability didn't have so many special effects. The magic trick of making so many firebirds disappear was actually done using Mirror Man. Yesterday, he tested the ability of Mirror Man, and today he found a piece of mirror in his pocket. First, throw the mirror on the ground, activate Crimson King's time erasure to make everyone lose the memory of the next few seconds. Then use Mirror Man to pull himself into the mirror world, wait for all the firebirds to collide, then pull the fire above the mirror into the mirror world, then go out and retrieve the mirror. But everyone was focused on the match, and many people's memories were erased without them knowing. John completed this perfect performance. Training was proceeding in an orderly manner. This battle with Sirio had indeed taught John a lesson. Who said natives can't have trump cards? If John's trump card hadn't been slightly better, he might have really fallen. After that, John had several more battles. The opponents were mostly enhancers and materializers. There were very few manipulators in the Sky Arena. However, their attack methods were too simple. With Stone Free, John was able to briefly exchange blows with Wilhelm, who was the floor master. With Stone Free, John easily won these matches. But the matches weren't always smooth sailing. In the fifth match, John encountered an unbeatable enemy, and John lost. It should be said that John directly conceded. When the opponent released their killing intent, John knew he couldn't win. That kind of aura was comparable to John's master, Wilhelm. As expected, the Hunter world is full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Believing the original work completely would lead to death without knowing how. This person, who didn't appear in the original work, was incredibly strong. Later, he heard that he had defeated a floor master. Couldn't afford to offend such a big shot. In the blink of an eye, John had been in the Sky Arena for over 200 days. He had learned almost all the non abilities he needed to learn. Of course, his proficiency couldn't compare to Gon and Killua, who had undergone Biscuit's devilish training on Greed Island. Seeing that he had learned almost everything, and Wilhelm had nothing more to teach, the next step was to rely on personal cultivation and accumulation. After that, John left the sky arena without any nostalgia. John still had self-awareness. Although John had many bizarre stand abilities, it was too early to challenge the floor master. John left the sky arena and rushed to his appointment with Robson. To be honest, the city where the hunter exam was held was too small. The prosperity of the city where the sky arena was located was among the best in the world. The most direct manifestation was that there was a large airship field here, and John could directly take an airship to Yornu City. Because he had a hunter license, he could ride public transportation for free in most parts of the world. The main reason he didn't use it last time to the sky arena was that there were too many losers from the hunter exam on the train. After all, a common man is guilty of possessing a treasure. Now that John had Crimson King and Mirror Man, he wasn't afraid of being hunted down. This time, John generously took out his hunter license to ride the airship for free. I just want to ask now, who else can kill me? John sat on the airship, looking at the surrounding scenery. The height of the airship was not high in this city, and many buildings were taller than the airship. Not to mention the room John had in the sky arena before was higher than this. It would take 10 hours to get from this city to Yornu City. John could. The food on the airship was also very good, plus pearl jam, it was perfect. Fortunately, eating pearl jam without hidden illnesses wouldn't cause too much of a reaction. Otherwise, John would be in big trouble. Perhaps because transportation in the hunter world was underdeveloped, the cost of riding an airship was very high. Those who could afford to ride an airship were all people with some money. The airship was very quiet, and basically no one was making loud noises. After eating, John walked to the corridor to look at the scenery. He had already left the city and was now above a forest. I have to say that the environmental protection in this other world is really good. In his previous life, he rarely saw such a large forest. In fact, what John didn't know was that this was the border between two countries, which was why there was such a large forest. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. John's whole body instinctively turned into threads. This was already John's instinct when encountering emergencies. It was an explosion. John didn't know what had happened. With a few loud booms, the wall next to John was also blown open, and John was also blown to the other side of the wall. Blood spurted out, and several pieces of glass pierced John's body. This was only the damage caused even after using Ren. Stone freeze thread transformation could greatly reduce the damage caused by blunt objects, but it was useless against sharp glass. Moreover, the explosion was very powerful. Even though stone free reduced part of it, John was still injured internally. Who exactly was it? John was thinking about who wanted to kill him. John tried to prop himself up, but a huge suction force sucked John directly away. This was an altitude of more than 700 meters, and the atmospheric pressure sucked John out. John could see that not only here, but also in many other places, the airship had been blown open. There were dozens of corpses that were sucked out of the airship by the atmospheric pressure like John and scattered in the air. Although the situation was very critical, John calmed down. It seemed that it wasn't targeting John. John didn't have such a big enemy. Stone Free's hand drilled out of John's body, stretch punch. Stone Free's arm turned into a long line, and the fist reached the bottom of the airship at once. Ripple breathing. Through the ripple, John successfully stuck to the bottom of the airship. Then John climbed up to the airship through his arm. The airship was severely damaged and was about to crash. John suddenly saw a bird crashing into the airship's airbag. Opening the epitaph of Crimson King, John jumped down. 2 seconds later, an explosion sounded overhead, and then a thrust from the explosion hit John, who was falling. Damn it, I just used your name, you old thing is so vengeful. I'm not Joseph Joestar. I don't even have Hermit Purple, and I don't want to be a vehicle killer. John roared. John was falling from a height of 700 meters. John, who had never even bungee jumped, was about to experience a high-altitude fall. How would John survive without skydiving equipment? To be continued. Chapter 44. Although John only thought for a short while, he had already descended to 400 meters above the ground. This wasn't a helicopter from the Stone Sea, the airship was now higher than in the Stone Sea, and it was accelerated by the shockwave of the explosion. Relying solely on line conversion and aura binding might allow him to survive, but he would definitely be seriously injured. Almost instantly, John caught a glimpse of two people above him, a man and a woman, or rather, a middle-aged man and a loli. The middle-aged man opened a parachute. It shouldn't be said that only the middle-aged man had a parachute, the lowly was clinging to the person with the parachute. MMP, why do they have parachutes when they're just passengers like me? Same airship ticket, is this discrimination? Watching the two people spreading dog food in the high sky, John felt a bit of heartache. John suddenly realized that he indeed hadn't bought an airship ticket, so he resentfully stopped complaining. He immediately used a stretching fist, hoping they would take him along. John was 200 meters away from them, and the stretching fist barely reached. But just as Stonefree's stretching fist was about to reach them, the little lowly moved. A mind bullet flew out of the little lowly's hand, hitting Stonefree's fist. John didn't catch them, and that wasn't the end of it, the little lowly threw several more mind bullets at John. What hatred, what grievance! I just wanted to hitch a ride on a parachute. Is that necessary? However, John confirmed one thing, it wasn't these two who blew up the airship. They also looked very disheveled, the one who blew up the airship should be an manipulator type. John saw that bird blow up the airship's airbag. The middle-aged man probably didn't have an ability, as he didn't react to Stonefree's stretching fist. The little lowly, maybe a little lowly, or maybe an old woman like Biscuit Kruger, should be an emitter type, but of course, she could also be from other types. But John immediately stopped thinking about it, and his line-converted body began to expand. In his previous life, he had heard that cats could fall from the 25th floor without getting hurt. Normal people certainly couldn't imitate that, but John was a little Superman after all. With the double cheat of a stand and an ability, John couldn't be measured by the eyes of a normal person anymore. John gradually relaxed his body, controlling his center of gravity. Hunching over with his limbs outstretched, his line-converted body expanded, like an umbrella, greatly increasing air resistance. John's speed in the air kept decreasing, and gradually, John's falling speed maintained at a stable rate. 100 meters from the ground, 80 meters, 60 meters. 40 meters, he could already reach the treetops of some trees. Stone free. John split off many threads from his body, entangling the surrounding branches. About to land, King Crimson punched out, and John's limbs landed. With a bang, John successfully landed, although he was disheveled, he wasn't injured. The back was basically hollowed out, and many threads connected from the edges of the hollowed out area, entangling the surrounding branches. After landing, John gradually retracted the split-off threads, and a blood-red wound appeared on his back, one thread was broken. Other than that, there were no other wounds, so it could be considered a perfect resolution to the crisis. However, being able to save his life in this situation was already very good, a little injury was nothing. John now had a feeling of surviving a disaster. But John didn't stop using Ripple, the Ripple energy, comparable to Jonathan's, healed John's wound, and in a short while, John's wound disappeared. John took a breath and immediately used Stone Free to be wary of the surroundings. John wasn't sure if there would be other attacks. John had already extracted some information about this attack. This was either a retaliatory terrorist attack or a murder. If it was a murder, then the target should be someone on the airship, possibly the middle-aged man and lowly from before, or possibly others on the airship who had already been killed. But now, John's biggest problem was not knowing where he was. Which direction should he go? Some people would say to cut down a tree and look at the tree rings to know, or at least look at the sun. But the problem is, which direction is your new city? John came here by airship, how would he know the route map of your new city? The wreckage of the airship was scattered in the sky, and John no longer had any hope that the positioning system was still intact on the airship. John's phone wasn't a satellite phone specifically for wilderness survival, there wasn't a single bar of signal in this deep mountain forest. He couldn't even make a phone call. John looked up and saw another airship appearing in the sky. Wait a minute, that airship feels so strange. John noticed that the airship's altitude was slowly decreasing, which was strange because airships should usually maintain a fixed altitude. But the airship's flight altitude was obviously decreasing, which was definitely artificial. That is to say, this airship was going to land. But it just so happened to be in the place where the airship John was on had just disintegrated. Too coincidental. John didn't believe in such coincidences. This is the scent of conspiracy. John immediately used it to hide his aura. John hid his body and slowly tracked the airship that was landing. No matter what the conspiracy, this airship had something John was looking for. Whether it was a locator, food, or hope of escaping. If it was unrelated to this incident, John could hitch a ride. If it was related to this terrorist attack, John could also find out the truth. John's hope was on this airship. The airship gradually approached the ground, and when it was about 100 meters from the ground, a light suddenly appeared in the distance. It was a high-speed mined bullet, with a very high non content, which John could see from so far away. The high-speed mined bullet was like a light in the air, hitting the airship's airbag. The sound of the explosion came again, and dozens of figures flew out of the exploding airship. They landed about 5 kilometers away from John. John immediately rushed over. At the same time, a feeling of palpitations filled John's heart. It was very dangerous there, John's instinct was warning him. John hesitated for a while, but still went there. To be honest, with King Crimson and Man in the Mirror, 2 stands, it wouldn't be a problem to run away if he couldn't win. They couldn't chase him into the mirror world. John slowly approached and found that the dozen or so people who jumped off the airship were fighting with the little lowly who had just attacked John. The middle-aged man was constantly retreating under the protection of the little lowly. John leaned against a tree and watched quietly. Fortunately, within, no one noticed his peeping. With a putchy sound, John felt something pierce his cervical spine. MMP, I was just bragging about my in, and now I'm immediately getting slapped in the face. Bro, you're walking a narrow path. A powerful controlling nun surged from the sharp weapon just now. However, it was useless. John was still very vigilant while watching the battle, and he had Stone Freeze full body line conversion activated. John turned to look at the person who attacked him. Swish, another sharp object inserted into John's forehead. Damn, thankfully it didn't hurt his forehead. This was the closest John had been to death. If this sharp object had moved forward 5 millimeters more, it would have blown up John's brain. But John saw clearly the person who attacked him. Danger, danger, danger. Chapter 45. In the lush, green forest, ancient trees stretched out their branches. The usual harmonious chirping of insects was absent, replaced by the sounds of explosions and pursuit. John, caught off guard by a sudden attack, leaped back to create some distance. He recognized the assailant as a needle man covered in needles. His mechanical and slender body was studded with round-headed nails. Illumi Zaldik, Killua's older brother. A very dangerous and brother-obsessed assassin. You're not Orlando's bodyguard, are you? No, I don't know what you're talking about, John said, pulling the needles out of his body. It seemed Orlando was Illumi's target. John remained wary as he watched Illumi, remembering how close he had come to being killed. Sorry about that, Illumi said emotionlessly before turning to leave. Anger. Perhaps John had become arrogant after learning Nin, or maybe it was the overconfidence of being seemingly invincible with Mirror Man and Crimson King, or perhaps it was Stone Free's natural advantage against manipulators. He realized Illumi must have killed all those people on the airship. Yet, Illumi showed no remorse or apology on his face. Illumi's disregard for life clashed with John's worldview. It's the murderers who should be repenting, why should I back down and try to smooth things over? Although he had known Illumi was a merciless demon, witnessing it firsthand was still unacceptable. Suddenly, John realized he couldn't control his body. Bastard, where do you think you're going? A cold voice came from John's mouth. John was certain he hadn't said that. Was he being controlled by some special ability? As John roared in anger, an icy chill swept over Illumi. It was a pure malice, a simple and powerful desire to kill, immediately alarming Illumi, who was familiar with killing. Illumi immediately went into combat mode, turning back to examine the kid who had moments ago seemed as harmless as a lamb. Illumi was surprised again. He actually didn't want to fight John. He had been secretly observing John earlier and thought he would make a good pawn. He hadn't reacted at all when pierced by his needles. Illumi couldn't figure out why the needles had been ineffective. It was undoubtedly unwise to antagonize John, but he seemed afraid of death and was retreating. Illumi didn't want to fight him either, but he hadn't expected the lamb to suddenly turn into a Tyrannosaurus Rex. The deep malice was something even Illumi, who had killed countless people, couldn't ignore. Oh, I'm really sorry. How about I give you 200 million Jenny as compensation? Illumi wanted to test the waters, as the current John gave him a great sense of danger. 200 million Jenny, that's a lot, but I refuse. My favorite thing is to say no to people who are full of themselves. John's mentality collapsed. Although that line was cool in the manga, it was too embarrassing to say now. He definitely wouldn't say it himself. However, John was certain of one thing: this must be John's second personality. This inner personality was like Doppio to Diavolo. Could it be a special effect of Crimson King, John wondered? Because Crimson King's face also had a pink little face, which might represent the second personality. What John didn't know was that Diavolo awakened Crimson King because he had a dual personality, while John was the opposite. He developed a dual personality because of Crimson King. No matter what happened, Illumi always kept a poker face. John wondered if Illumi was expressionless. Although Illumi was a manipulator, his physical skills were not weak. He could even be said to be very strong, a whole level above the Phantom Troop's Shulnark. In fact, the Zaldik family, except for their ancestor Maha Zaldik, were not enhancement-type non-users. However, the Zaldik family members' hand-to-hand combat skills were completely unafraid of most enhancement-type non-users. Illumi also used the assassin's pace in a decent manner, and several Illumis instantly appeared before John's eyes. An ordinary person might be stunned for a moment, but John was someone who had seen the world. Although Killua's level was not high, having seen it before greatly reduced the surprise. John immediately used Gyo to see which one was real. Illumi moved, rushing towards John head-on at lightning speed. The Nen needles were being used by other controlled people to deal with the mission target, Orlando. Illumi was quite confident in his own strength. John also smiled. John's favorite thing was head-on combat. Illumi approached. Having been trained since childhood, Illumi could now push open the three-layered testing gate. Even if he could only exert half of that strength in combat, it would still be several tons of force. Illumi's fingers were straightened and joined together, his two hands like two knives, swinging out rapidly. The swiftly swung arms were as flexible as snakes, the fingertips sharper than blades. The arms, bent like snakes, swung wildly, forming a death zone in front of him. This was Snake Hands. As expected of the eldest son of the Zaldik family, he knew more techniques than Killua did now. His strength was definitely not something Killua could compare to now. But Illumi wasn't much older than John. Head-on confrontation was what John wanted. John's teacher, Wilhelm, was himself a master of enhancement. He was stronger than Stone Free in terms of power, but far inferior in speed to John's stand. If it weren't for his profound martial arts skills, Wilhelm would have been in a difficult fight. Stone Free. The blue figure appeared. I won't lose to you. Stone Free clashed with Illumi's snake hands, but in the end, Stone Free's punch speed was a little faster, faintly suppressing Illumi. But Illumi was an assassin, and what he was best at was not head-on combat but sneak attacks from behind. Illumi spun around to avoid John's attack. Illumi came to John's side with a strange movement, which was John's blind spot. He gathered Nen on his arm and struck John's spine with full force. If this move landed solidly, it would definitely break his spine. But John suddenly disappeared from Illumi's sight out of thin air. No, the surrounding scenery had also changed. Although it was only a subtle change, Illumi noticed it. But Illumi didn't have time to think about it. The biggest problem was, where did John go? Illumi saw the shadow behind him with the corner of his eye. That's right, John was already standing behind Illumi. John used time erase at the critical moment. It was too late, John's Stone Free was too fast for Illumi to dodge. Illumi used the fastest speed of his life to harden some vital points of his body. But John's original goal was not to kill Illumi, but Illumi's arm. Instantly, a huge tearing sensation came from his arm. Illumi's arm was cut off. This was also the scene John had seen with Epitaph. Hitting vital points would kill Illumi, which was not what John wanted to see. It wasn't that he was afraid of the Zaldik family. No one would seek revenge if a Zaldik family member died on a mission. But many non-users would generate death aura after death and attach it to the murderer, which would greatly damage John and wouldn't be worth the loss. But then an aura under Illumi's feet erupted, preparing to jump away. John's aura punches didn't miss, and several of Stone Free's threads had already wrapped around Illumi. Aura aura aura. Illumi broke free after only taking a few punches. Relying on Stone Free's punching power, he flew further away. John wanted to pursue, but the sound of gunfire came, and Stone Free immediately blocked all the bullets. Two burly men emerged from the jungle, their eyes blank and dull. Their body postures were also very strange, like zombies. With Stone Free's extraordinary vision, John saw the needles on their necks. They were people controlled by Illumi. Because John's Ren was not yet at the point where he could ignore bullets, even with threat enhancement and Ren, he would still feel pain. They used guns to interfere with John, and Illumi took the opportunity to pick up his severed hand and run away without the demeanor of a master. John. Chapter 46. In the lush, verdant forest, ancient trees stretched out their branches. The usual harmonious chirping of insects was absent, replaced by the sounds of explosions and pursuit. John, caught in a sudden attack, leaped back to create some distance. He recognized his attacker as a nail man covered in nails. His mechanical and slender body was studded with round-headed nails. Illumi Zaldik, Killua's older brother. A very dangerous brother, complex assassin. You're not Orlando's bodyguard, are you? No, I don't know what you're talking about. John pulled the needles from his body. It seemed Orlando was Illumi's target. John still looked at Illumi warily, after almost being killed just now. Sorry about that, Illumi said emotionlessly before turning to leave. Anger. Perhaps John had become arrogant after learning Nen, or perhaps it was the overconfidence of being invincible with the combination of Mirror Man and Crimson King, or perhaps it was Stone Free's advantage against manipulators. He must have been the one who killed so many people on the airship. But Illumi showed no remorse or apology. Illumi's indifference to life clashed greatly with John's worldview. It's the murderer who should repent, why should I back down and try to smooth things over? Although he knew Illumi was a demon who killed without blinking an eye, seeing it firsthand was still unacceptable. Bastard, where do you think you're going? A cold voice came from John's mouth. John's entire demeanor changed. As John roared, a chilling cold swept over Illumi. It was pure malice, a simple and powerful desire to kill you. Illumi, familiar with killing, was immediately shocked. Illumi immediately entered a battle-ready state, turning back to examine John, whose aura had been as gentle as a lamb just moments before. It was as if he had completely become another person. What surprised Illumi even more was that he actually didn't want to confront John. John had been secretly observing him earlier, and Illumi thought he would be a good pawn. He didn't react at all after being stabbed by his needles. Illumi didn't understand why the needles had lost their effect. Undoubtedly, it was unwise to antagonize John, but seeing John retreating as if he was afraid of death, Illumi decided not to bother him. Illumi didn't want to fight him either, never expecting the lamb to suddenly turn into a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Even Illumi, who had killed countless people, couldn't ignore this deep malice. Oh, I'm really sorry. How about I give you 200 million Jenny as compensation? Illumi wanted to test him, as the current John gave him a great sense of crisis. 200 million Jenny, that's a lot, Daka, but, Kotoru, I refuse. My favorite thing is to say no to self-righteous people. John pointed at Illumi with a flamboyant gesture, striking a Jojo pose. As soon as he finished speaking, John felt a wave of embarrassment, but John didn't show any change on the surface, maintaining his persona at least. No matter what happened, Illumi always had a poker face. John began to suspect that Illumi might have facial paralysis. Although Illumi is a manipulator, his physical skills are not weak. It could even be said that they are very strong, a whole level above the Phantom Troop's Shulnark. John immediately used Gyo to see which one was real. He couldn't tell. Illumi used Gyo, as expected of a seasoned assassin, doing things meticulously. But it was useless. Crimson King's epitaph's prediction is the bane of all ambushers. Illumi moved, rushing straight towards John at high speed. The needles were useless, and other controlled people were dealing with the mission target Orlando. Illumi was quite confident in his own strength. John also smiled. John's favorite thing was a head-on clash. Illumi approached. Having undergone training since childhood, Illumi could now push open the third level of the testing gate. Even if he could only exert half of that strength in combat, it would still be several tons of force. Illumi's fingers were brought together and straightened, his two hands like two knives, flung out rapidly. Illumi's rapidly flung arms were incredibly flexible, his fingertips sharper than blades. Illumi's snake-like, twisting arms swung wildly, forming a death zone in front of him. This is Snake Hands. As expected of the eldest son of the Zaldik family, he knew many more techniques than Killua does now. And his strength was definitely beyond what Killua could compare to now. But Illumi wasn't much older than John. A head-on collision was something John was happy to see. John's master, Wilhelm, was originally a master of the enhancement system. He was stronger than Stone Free in terms of power, but far inferior to John's stand in terms of speed. If it weren't for his profound martial arts skills, Wilhelm would have been in a difficult fight. Stone free. The blue figure appeared. I won't lose to you. Aura 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 aura. Stone Free and Illumi's snake hands clashed, but in the end, Stone Free's punching speed was a little faster, faintly suppressing Illumi. But Illumi was an assassin, and what he was best at was not a head-on clash, but a sneak attack from behind. Illumi spun to avoid John's attack. Illumi came to John's side with a strange movement technique, which was John's blind spot for attack. Nan gathered on his arm as he struck John's spine with full force. If this move landed, it would definitely result in a broken spine. But John suddenly disappeared from Illumi's sight out of thin air, and the surrounding scenery also changed. Although it was only a subtle change. But Illumi noticed it. But Illumi didn't have time to think about it. The biggest problem was, where did John go? Illumi saw the shadow behind him with the corner of his eye. That's right, John was already standing behind Illumi. John used time erase at the critical moment. It was too late, John's Stone Free was too fast for Illumi to dodge. Illumi used the fastest speed in his life to use KO on some vital parts of his body. But John's original goal was not to take Illumi's life, but Illumi's arm. Instantly, a huge tearing sensation came from his arm, and Illumi's arm was severed. This was also the scene John saw with Epitaph. Hitting a vital point would kill Illumi, which was not what John wanted to see. It wasn't that he was afraid of the Zaldik family. No one would seek revenge for the death of a Zaldik family member because of a mission. But many Nan users would generate Death Nan after their death and attach it to the murderer, which would be a great loss for John. But the Nan aura under Illumi's feet erupted, preparing to jump away. John's aura punches didn't miss, and several of Stone Free's threads had already entangled Illumi. Aura aura aura. Illumi broke free after only taking a few punches. Using Stone Free's punching power, he flew even further. John wanted to pursue, but the sound of gunfire came, and Stone Free immediately blocked all the bullets. Two burly men emerged from the jungle, their eyes dull and lifeless. Their body postures were also very strange, like zombies. With Stone Free's extraordinary vision, John saw the nails on their necks. They were people controlled by Illumi. Because John's Ren was not yet at the point where he could ignore bullets. Even if he used Thread and Ren, he would still feel pain. They used their guns to interfere with John, and Illumi took the opportunity to pick up his severed hand and ran away without any demeanor of a master. John. Chapter 47. Illumi ran without hesitation, not even thinking about getting revenge. John spent 30 seconds dealing with the two controlled individuals. John killed them because anyone pierced by Illumi's Nan needles was as good as dead, they were disposable puppets. It took so long mainly because he couldn't use King Crimson's time erasure. If he did, John's abilities might be deduced. Before, Illumi could only guess that John's Nan ability was related to space. Using it again might reveal something more. Explosions and gunshots echoed incessantly, and John immediately rushed over. John himself didn't know why, but he felt there was a chance to escape there. IRA. Nan bullets flew from the little lowly's hands, targeting the tools controlled by Illumi and his Nan needles. The little lowly fought while retreating. It had to be said that her strength was very high, and she used Nan bullets with superb skill. No one could get close to her in a short time. However, facing so many people plus a professional killer was still too much. Because she fired so many Nan bullets in a short time, her stamina and aura were already insufficient for such high-intensity combat. Especially Illumi's Nan needles, perhaps having learned a lesson, or perhaps because having only one hand made things inconvenient, Illumi didn't engage in direct combat, only constantly interfering with Nan needles. The uncle protected by the little lowly scurried around with his head in his hands, and John instantly understood the reason. It seemed that the uncle was Illumi's target, the Orlando that Illumi was asking about. If it were just the little lowly alone, she might be able to escape, but with the uncle, it was impossible to avoid Illumi's pursuit. Suddenly, 5 or 6 black-clad tool people with guns turned their muzzles toward John, who had just arrived and was observing in the dark. SHIT. Bullets followed, and the little lowly's pressure was greatly reduced. John remained expressionless, vigilant against Illumi, and Stone Free casually blocked all the bullets. John instantly became the focus of the entire scene. No wonder protagonists in anime like to show up halfway through a fight, John realized. Illumi's mind was entirely on John. Although he still had a poker face, the veins popping out on his face showed that he was in a bad mood. The little loli also seized the moment when Illumi's attention shifted and fired a high-speed nen bullet at Illumi. Damn it! Don't run! The little loli roared with a ferocious expression. What happened? Who am I? Why am I here? John asked the three questions of the soul. The little loli even offered her own facial expression, ferocious yet cute. The little loli and John could only vent their anger on the Tool people. Because of the Tool people's obstruction, John and the little loli missed the best opportunity to track Illumi. The atmosphere once again became awkward. But John wasn't planning to leave. The little loli was his only hope of leaving the forest. Hey, little sister, what's your name? John was indeed a bachelor for 2 lifetimes, a man who relied on his strength to stay single. John successfully earned a glare from the little loli, showing that she was very unhappy, but he still managed to get some information. The little loli's name was Leorio Paladinite, 15 years old but looking only 11 or 12, with her hair in buns and wearing a blue coat that was damaged from the fighting. In fact, Leorio was a full 2 years older than John, a newly debuted professional hunter. Leorio's first request was only accepted with her master's guarantee, and she didn't expect her first battle to be a failure. Truly a cause for celebration. Leorio knew that without John, she wouldn't have been able to hold on for much longer, but it was indeed because of John that such an opportunity arose. Otherwise, Orlin wouldn't have let that bird get close. Leorio skillfully flipped through the corpse of the pitiful target, Mr. Orlando, and found the satellite phone. Without any sadness for the employer being killed. Now we have to wait 5 days. This is no longer within the territory of the Republic of Padokia, and the rescue team cannot arrive directly. We have to communicate with the embassy of this country. What terrible efficiency! A matter of life and death can be delayed for so long, but Leorio was calm, showing that this was nothing unusual. But John, who had transmigrated from China, still couldn't accept it. After all, rescues in China are super fast. At the same time, a helicopter started up. Surprisingly, this seemingly large helicopter made surprisingly little noise. The helicopter gradually rose from a part of the forest and flew away. On the helicopter, a young man with a severed hand expressionlessly placed the severed limb into a sterile incubator. Go to life. Illumi said to the pilot without turning his head. The plane suddenly turned and flew in the direction of the setting sun. Pori 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 buzz. Illumi's phone rang, and Illumi opened the phone. That fat bastard Miluki. Illumi saw the incoming call. What's the matter, Miluki? Nothing, my little bird saw it. Your hand is broken off. Was this enemy so troublesome? Illumi was silent for a while. Help me book a number, my arm is broken. Okay, but deduct the money from this mission's share first. Okay, how did you lose your hand? A fat man was lying in front of the computer, tilting his head while holding the phone, stuffing potato chips into his mouth with one hand and typing on the computer keyboard with the other. I don't know either. Illumi replied immediately. Miluki suddenly stopped typing. You're not kidding, bro. I'll send you the information of those 2 people just now. Illumi's phone immediately received a text message with the personal information of John and Leorio. Illumi looked at it for a while, set John as a non-kill target. He is very dangerous. Killing him is a losing proposition. In the future, tell Dad and Grandpa not to accept any requests to kill him. Miluki was shocked. His explosion bird arrived when Illumi's hand was already broken. He didn't know what happened, but it was the first time he had received such high praise from Illumi. I know. Miluki silently copied a copy of John's information. Although John's information had been encrypted by the Hunter Association, it was not difficult for Miluki to crack. Miluki saw that John had just passed the Hunter exam last year. His nin ability was also recently learned. A genius. Miluki leaned back in his chair, inexplicably thinking of his 7-year-old brother who was still in the Heavens Arena. Illumi hung up the phone and looked into the distance. He was now regretting taking this mission. Originally, it was just to assassinate an ordinary wealthy man, but he didn't expect the target to charter an airship first, and then have most of his bodyguard members go up to cover his tracks, and then disguise himself and board another airship. Illumi was also deceived. Arriving at the destination was the target's territory, and as a local tyrant, it would be very troublesome for Illumi to find him again. So, after Illumi controlled the people on the entire airship, he entrusted his brother Miluki Zaldik. Miluki used a high-tech bird bomb to blow up the airship where the target was located, which was the airship John was on. What he didn't expect was that the target also hired a powerful hunter, Leorio, and the target survived under her protection. Illumi then brought the controlled Tool people back, originally planning to wait for the Tool people to exhaust Leorio's stamina and then harvest them in one wave. He didn't expect to encounter the cheat, John. After losing a hand to John, Illumi knew that he had lost a lot this time, and John's ability was too terrifying, so silent and undetectable. If it weren't for the reputation of a killer, Illumi would have run away already. Illumi in his prime could kill Leorio in 2 minutes, but now it was difficult for Illumi, who had lost a hand, to do so. Moreover, John had only temporarily not caught up yet, and Illumi didn't dare to be careless. After Illumi saw Leorio and the explosion bird lurking in the tree, he thought of a way to set up a trap. That's how that scene just now happened. The helicopter flew into the night. Today was the new moon, and the moon was like a curved golden hook hanging in the mid-sky. Chairman Netero watched today's training video and showed a happy smile. I see. Chapter 48. The chirping of insects and the calls of beasts are the forest's ceaseless joyful songs. Nocturnal creatures gallop in the pitch-black night, with only countless pairs of emerald green eyes visible. This is the usual tranquility of the forest, but today 2 uninvited guests arrived in the forest, namely, John and Leorio, who were trapped inside. A solitary and lonely person sat by the campfire, gnawing on strange fruits. Yes, it was John. The gold coins saved before, plus the rewards from the battle with Illumi, are enough to draw another round of cards. But looking at the item cards that appeared, John despaired. A lucky start. Mr. Karsa's loincloth. Waving this loincloth under the sun can increase the user's charm. John was silent. What charm is there to increase? Waving this kind of thing under the sun, he would probably be treated as a pervert and arrested directly. The most terrible thing is that this thing is not easy to dispose of now. This deep mountain forest doesn't even have a place to throw loincloths. Recently, John's luck has been consistently bad. First, the airship he was on exploded, and then he was attacked by Illumi. John decided to postpone the lottery for a while, and it would not be too late to draw when his luck turned around. The crackling of firewood and John's chewing sounds were unusually prominent in the quiet night. John also noticed that the atmosphere was not right and stopped chewing. Today, John experienced great embarrassment. John was laughed at because his wild survival experience was too weak. That's right, the previous hunter exam was also held on Barrow Island, which was covered with primitive forests, but this time John used his computer to find out the species on the island before landing. And he also brought Lindsay, the human encyclopedia. This time, who would have thought that something would happen even when taking an airship? John missed Lindsay very much. John judged whether the fruits were poisonous by watching a stork-like bird eat a few fruits. Because it flew too fast, John didn't catch it, but John got these fruits. Do you want to die? Leorio looked at John in shock. This is a very widespread poisonous plant, which even children generally know. But John is not from this world and has never been to the forest. He came to take the hunter exam after studying for a few weeks in junior high school. He didn't know what this was at all. And this kind of bird has antibodies to this plant's toxins, so it's okay. If a person eats it, they will definitely die within 2 days if they don't get treatment. Fortunately, Leorio brought back a few wild game, which solved the dinner problem. Leorio was in a very bad mood, so she didn't talk to John much. The first mission was messed up. How will she be able to mix in this circle in the future? This mission was also obtained for her by her master, and if this goes on, her master's reputation will also be damaged. The atmosphere fell into a strange situation. After such a big stimulus, although both of them were very tired, they were not sleepy. Today's wind is very noisy. John, who was at level 10 in awkward chat, raised his head pretentiously, wanting to save the awkward atmosphere. Leorio stared at John, and the atmosphere became even more awkward. After a long silence, Leorio spoke. Have you never talked to a girl before? John's heart was pierced by an arrow. Indeed, John had always been a bachelor in his previous life. If he had good social skills, he would not have remained a virgin. In this life, he only stayed in school for a few weeks, and it was still an all-boys school. The hunter exam was basically all men, and the women were mostly big-boned dinosaurs, or thugs pointing guns at other people's heads. As for the heavens arena, the ratio of men to women was touching. John had not encountered a female opponent yet. If it weren't for a few eye-catching staff ladies, the Heavens Arena would probably have become Heaven's gay city. But because he wanted to cultivate, John didn't have the time and energy to have in-depth communication with the ladies. This is for you, it's a waste anyway if there's too much. Leorio handed John a roasted red bird. Glug, John swallowed a mouthful of saliva. But John remembered his mother's teachings from childhood, you can't take other people's things casually, you can't owe favors. John refused. I really don't understand you, eat it, I'm full anyway. Leorio said seriously. Looking at Leorio's unaffected appearance, John accepted her kindness. The next day, John went out hunting. Now John decided not to bother with plants anymore, mammals can generally be eaten if you cut off the head and tail. John found a monkey population. As for why he didn't eat monkeys, mainly because John didn't like eating humanoid creatures, he couldn't get over it psychologically. But the structure of monkeys and humans is very similar, and what monkeys eat can basically be eaten by humans. Now John had just stolen their stored food from the monkey's cave, a black spherical object. John licked it, it tasted a bit like chocolate, with a faint sweetness. John put the thing away. He killed a few ignorant wild goats and returned to the campfire. John marked the way back with stone free so he wouldn't get lost. Although Leorio knows many species and has a lot of wild survival experience, she doesn't dare to go far for fear of not being able to find her way back. This is very dangerous in the jungle. Someone once got lost 5 meters away from the camp and starved to death. As soon as John went back, he found that the camp had changed a lot, and all the trees around it had been cut down. A clearing with a radius of 5 meters was cleared. When Leorio saw John coming back, she immediately took the wild goat that John had hunted and prepared to roast the goat. John had already exposed Stone Free and didn't want to expose Pearl Jam anymore. Pearl Jam's ability is too buggy. But John's own cooking skills were very touching. The food John hunted yesterday was burnt before he accepted Leorio's roast chicken. Hey, Leorio, I found something good. It's very sweet and delicious. John took out the black round chocolate ball he had just gotten. Hearing that girls like sweets, John thought this would be a gift for Leorio. Leorio looked at John in shock and then at the wild goat. Sorry, I don't eat chocolate goat poop. I didn't expect that I treated you as a friend, but you wanted me to accompany you to eat shit. John recalled the fear of being dominated. He threw away the chocolate goat poop as if he was throwing a hot potato. If I said I haven't eaten it, would you believe it? John looked at Leorio expectantly. Leorio expressed understanding and looked at John curiously. Speaking of which, chocolate goat poop is still very popular among some wealthy people. I understand. Are you a devil? You don't believe it at all. John took a deep breath and left lonely. John may have already socially died in Leorio's heart. John turned his grief into motivation and started cutting down trees. The power of Stone Free is indeed not a cover, the speed far exceeds Leorio's emission system, and the clearing suddenly expanded into a large circle with a radius of 10 meters. This is to prevent the campfire sparks from causing a forest fire, and secondly, it is for the rescue team to be able to find it quickly in a few days. Moreover, cutting down trees here is completely fine for John and Leorio who have hunter licenses, and they don't have to go to jail. After all, there are no precious tree species here. With the A-level power and speed of Stone Free, cutting down trees is not easy. Chapter 49. After that, John never went looking for food again, it was too embarrassing. The injury Lindy sustained earlier had almost recovered, mainly because the fight with those automaton didn't cause much damage. To increase the team's efficiency, John guarded the camp while Lindy went out hunting. John revealed some of his unimportant abilities, such as the ability to freely create lines with Stone Free. There were also some abilities he couldn't hide, like Stone Free's strength, speed, and the properties of its lines. Now, Lindy was connected to Stone Free's line, which greatly increased the search area for food. John and Lindy also established a set of codes. If something happened, they could use NAN to send messages to each other through the line at a certain frequency. As they spent more time together, John gradually understood Lindy. She was probably a second-generation hunter like Gon. Her master had also been laying the foundation for her since she was young, which was completely different from John, a self-taught nobody. Lindy had been learning the professional knowledge required of a qualified hunter since she was a child. Lindy could be said to be an encyclopedia-like hunter. She even took the hunter exam with NAN abilities. The effect of that exam could be compared to Killua's performance when he learned NAN. Everyone in her class except for another white-haired kid who also knew and was wiped out by Lindy. However, Lindy was definitely hiding something, especially about her master. John guessed that it might be because her master had too many enemies. Since she didn't want to talk about it, John was too embarrassed to ask more. Lindy came back carrying some game, a snake, and 2 pheasants. Today's lunch was secured. These days, they had been eating all kinds of wild game, but without any seasoning, the taste was unappetizing. Lindy didn't care, but it was hard on John, who had been spoiled by the tastes of the Heavens Arena. Even using pearl jam couldn't mask the lack of seasoning. But even if it was hard to swallow, there were only a few days left. Time had passed unnoticed for 3 days. John and Lindy's lives were getting better and better. They had a simple wooden hut and some household utensils. These were all made with stone-free, and because the precision was insufficient, they were a bit rough. If ordinary people used what John made, they might get their skin rubbed raw, but John and Lindy were non-users who wrapped themselves in an everyday and weren't afraid of these rough bumps. After a simple lunch, John went out to fetch water. John could handle this simple task. John came to the stream more than 100 meters away from the camp and washed his face. Then, he caught a few fish with Ripple as a late-night snack and put a water bottle in the river. John heard a strange noise. John quickly ran to the camp. It turned out that the sky, which had been blocked by trees, was now visible. Above, a military green helicopter was hovering over the camp. Lindy was using NAN bullets to bombard the wooden house that John had worked so hard to build these days, clearing the camp for the helicopter to land. Yo! Little Lindy, you're really in a mess. A familiar voice came from the plane. The plane slowly landed, and the cabin door was opened. A smiling face appeared. Yo, isn't this little John? You had me worried to death. A sloppily dressed person jumped off the plane, kicking up a cloud of dust as he stepped on the broken wood of the house. The visitor was Robson, with whom John had made an appointment. Ha ha ha, how did you 2 little geniuses both fail? Robson stood up, dusted off his clothes, and looked at John and Lindy with a smile. John and Lindy successfully boarded the helicopter. It was unknown how Robson knew Lindy. According to Robson, he had been waiting for a long time at the airship waiting area that day. Hearing that the airship had lost contact, he had been investigating and was relieved to learn that Lindy had sent out a distress signal. Originally, the embassy was going to negotiate for a few days, but in the end, Robson came forward and got this helicopter through the Hunter Association. Robson asked about the details of the incident, but John omitted Scarlet King, only saying that Illumi had already lost an arm before. Lindy frowned but didn't say anything. She knew that Illumi had definitely lost his arm not long before he fought her. The cloth on the wound was still dripping blood. You should know that these experts can achieve hemostasis by contracting their muscles, and the blood in the pocket of the clothes will dry quickly. The injury to this broken arm was definitely not something that had been there for a long time. But seeing that John didn't want to talk about it, Lindy was also very tactful and didn't refute. After listening to John's explanation, Robson suddenly understood. But being able to survive from a Zaldiq family assassin is already considered. You guys are lucky. Robson said with a sigh. He was relatively straightforward, with a large red and white painted face. His face was ferocious, and he also had pigtails. He liked red. At the same time, Badabai was also Lindy's maternal grandfather, the younger brother of Lindy's maternal grandfather. To be honest, you couldn't tell that Lindy and that burly man were related by blood at all. Thinking that the cute little Lindy would slowly move closer to Badabai in the future, he couldn't help but shudder. No wonder Lindy was embarrassed to say her teacher's name. She was also considered a third-generation hunter. Like Gon, when he was taking the exam, the old captain, Satos, and others helped Gon more or less. Lindy probably received more than a little help in secret. In terms of popularity, Badabai was far more popular than the sloppy ghost like Jing. Looking at the city whose outline was gradually becoming clearer, everyone stopped talking. Even from such a distance, you could feel the hustle and bustle of the world rushing towards you. The long-lost human world made John both expectant and disillusioned. Was the life he had been living in the remote primeval forest these days really real? John turned to look at Lindy, who was also staring at the city in a daze, with an undisguised smile on her lips. TMD, isn't my goal to live until I get Star Platinum, over heaven? How can these recent encounters be considered living? John recalled his various experiences over the past year, from transmigrating to the present. Is everyone a slave to fate? John looked up at the blue sky. Damn fate, I'll go to hell with you. Chapter 50. John treated Robeson and Leorio to a meal to thank them for their care during these days. After that, John parted ways with Leorio, who had to return to his master to give a report. John and Robeson then set off for your new city. The trip to your new city was by bullet train, which had to cross several national borders, because the time it took to reach the destination by taking a detour was about the same as using an airship. This trip was fairly smooth, and nothing unexpected happened. In fact, Robeson, as a bounty hunter, was not alone, he had his own team. According to the agreement John and Robeson had made before, Robeson would help John cover up the impact of the incident and protect the old butler and his wife. In exchange, John would work for Robeson for 3 months after passing the hunter exam and learning Nen. In fact, bounty hunters earn a lot of money. Robeson wanted John to get familiar with it. He believed that after 3 months, with a little pep talk, John would definitely stay and continue to be exploited by Robeson. Delighted, delighted. Robeson's studio was an organization of talented people who worked together to find and capture criminals. The studio would take 10% of the bounty money earned by capturing criminals. As soon as Robeson got off the airship, he drove John for a while to downtown Your New City. Located in York County, Your New City was far larger and more prosperous than the city where the Heavens Arena was located. The prosperous area of that city was only around the Heavens Arena. The city was still surrounded by a large number of slums with simple houses built of wood. Unlike the coexistence of poverty and wealth there, Your New City, although it also had relatively underdeveloped areas, did not have such slums. But this was also for a reason. Your New City was a prosperous and decadent city. This city was controlled by the mafia, and the wooden houses in the slums had long been squeezed out by the mafia. Of course, if you have money and can afford the protection fee, it's another matter. Your New City is also a metropolis that appeared in the original work, and it has the largest auction house here. As long as you dare to offer it, they dare to sell it, no matter what level of cultural relics. This is the main location where the Phantom Troop arc takes place. On the surface, it is even more prosperous than the Sea City of the previous life. Robeson drove John around several corners to a building next to an office building. The office building was not high, only 8 stories, and it was very small compared to the surrounding buildings. Look, this is my Robeson's funhouse, Robeson said, pointing to the office building. Robeson's tone was full of a sense of pride. There are too many things to complain about this name, I don't know where to start. In fact, to be honest, such a large office building is still very impressive in Your New City, where every inch of land is worth its weight in gold. Your New City's real estate industry is not much worse than the Beijing-Shanghai area of the previous life. Our studio has a total of 23 people, plus you, a total of 24. 5 are responsible for logistics and information gathering. As he spoke, Robeson pushed open the door, and John followed Robeson into the office building. Robeson pressed the elevator to the top floor. It looked small from the outside, but the space was actually quite large. The 4th floor is where we usually work, and the rooms on the other floors can be lived in. Let me familiarize you with the environment first. The elevator reached the 4th floor, the elevator door opened, and Robeson took the lead to go out. This is a gym, with all kinds of fitness equipment. Is this where Robeson works? It doesn't look like a place to work at all. John shed a drop of cold sweat. Yo, team leader is back. A chestnut-haired young man who was jumping rope greeted Robeson. Yo, Prow, you're exercising again, keep it up. Robeson responded with a smile. This is... Prow noticed John behind Robeson. Oh, he's a new member I found, named John. Yo, hello, my name is Prow. The chestnut-haired youth stopped and greeted John. John politely responded, then followed Robeson to continue walking inside. Opening the door, John finally breathed a sigh of relief. The situation inside was still normal. It was a normal office space. There were more than a dozen computers and some entertainment facilities such as sofas. The decoration was quite satisfactory. There were several pennants on the wall, and some decorative bottles that looked like antiques, but John didn't understand antiques. The desks here were scattered with documents. Well, the environment was not very good. John looked at Robeson with a suspicious expression. Hey, you have so little confidence in me? Do you think I'm that kind of person? John was silent in his heart. Then Robeson sat down in that seat. John rubbed his forehead. As expected, it was him. The messiest table was indeed yours? I almost had expectations for you just now. Damn it, give me back my trust in you. The others who were buried in their computers also turned their heads and greeted Robeson. Prow, the chestnut-haired young man who was exercising outside, also changed his clothes and came in. Hey, did you take a shower after exercising? The air in the room doesn't circulate. A salty female youth, estimated to be in her 20s, looked at Prow with dead fish eyes. Oh, I rushed to take a shower in a hurry. Prow said with a smile. The salty female youth then noticed John next to Robeson. Robeson, who is this kid? Ah, he's a new member I invited. Robeson scratched the back of his head and said happily. Sigh. The salty female youth stared straight at John, and then looked at Robeson with questioning eyes. Robeson just smiled and didn't speak. The salty female youth's gaze turned back and forth between John and Robeson for a long time, as if trying to see something. After a while, she withdrew her gaze and turned her attention back to the computer. The other members who were really using the computer also took off their headphones and scrutinized John. There was no more reaction, but because of this, John confidently looked at what each member was doing now. This look was not important, but it made John very happy. The salty female youth was browsing online shopping malls, function similar to Dobeo. 3 other members were playing games, and they had just lost a game. There was also one person watching a colored movie, and he immediately hid it when John came. But what kind of person was John? The superb vision brought by the stand immediately saw through their little actions. If John had to work here in the future, John was afraid that he would be desperate. Not a single person in the entire studio was doing serious work, and the rhythm was about to go bankrupt. But John was just to fulfill the agreement. What does the company's performance have to do with me? What does the company's bankruptcy have to do with me? It's even better to be fired. Such an environment would be better for slacking off. John had seen the computer configuration here, which was very high, and playing games should not lag. Prow, take John to the surrounding supermarkets to take a look. He needs to buy some daily necessities. Robeson opened his phone and casually ordered Prow. The chestnut-haired Prow was very enthusiastic and took John to a nearby shopping mall to purchase daily necessities. Chapter 51. 10 days had passed, and John had successfully integrated into the team. That's right, relying on the gaming talent brought by the Goddardom, John successfully gained the favor of the gaming trio. John also understood the current situation of the group. When John first arrived, the studio had already received a commission, and the final work was nearing completion. The escaped criminal had already been located. Therefore, the combat personnel were out preparing for the final roundup, which is why the logistics team was so idle. In fact, the logistics team was always idle like this, only showing enthusiasm when a job came in. Perhaps because Robeson didn't mention it, and John's gaming skills were so outstanding, everyone assumed John was also supporting the logistics. Anyway, the remuneration was distributed according to labor, so at most, there would just be another mouth to feed. Robeson couldn't reveal John's background, and the others in the studio tacitly accepted John's existence. Of course, if they were inclined to investigate, they could quickly find combat videos of John as a gladiator in the Sky Arena. Robeson didn't want to talk, and they were too lazy to investigate. However, recently, they caught a small thief, and John showed off a little. This small thief was a novice task that a senior in the studio had given to John. Even so, many people were still worried and came along. John didn't even need to use his stand. After all, this small thief was just an ordinary person who couldn't use Nin. He had some intelligence and created a series of murders, but he only used tools. His own strength was average. One punch was enough to solve the opponent. After all, John could use Nin. John's Nin quantity wasn't outstanding, only average. Anyone who knew a little Nin could do it. This action didn't reveal John's strength. But actually, they didn't expect John to have any great strength anyway. However, John's computer skills were worth anticipating. However, John's gaming skills were a gift from the Goddardom. He also knew a little computer programming, after all, he used to make games. But that was it. He knew a little about hacking, but he couldn't do it. Not to mention the computer language in this world was different from his previous life. Even the text John currently used was a language that didn't exist on Earth. This place had a completely different culture and environment from Earth in his previous life. Chinese was an extinct ancient language, and English had also become a minority language. The order of the letters on the keyboard was also different, so John was only a beginner now. Originally, he planned to copy some famous games from his previous life to get rich, but after spending some time in the Sky Arena, he gave up. Anyway, he was already so rich, why would he bother to risk losing his hair to relearn programming and develop games? Those games from his previous life were developed by a top studio. Now, John, as an ordinary college student, wouldn't necessarily be able to create them even if he sacrificed all his hair. A few days ago, John sent the game plan for Phantom Plants vs. Magic Beasts to a relatively large game company, but there was still no news. However, John's good days were coming to an end. Recently, the studio received a new job involving an international fugitive. But there was one very troublesome point: your new city was a kingdom of gangs, where gangs were legal. One of the lairs of one of the 10 Dons forces was in your new city. There were countless other gangs, large and small. Being entangled by gangs here was very troublesome. If possible, it was best to avoid provoking them. Proya, Riddle, Ying Tuo, and John, come with me. Robson put out his cigarette, threw the butt into the ashtray, and stood up. The others looked at Robson in surprise. The fugitive this time is called Merk. He should be an user, but his specific abilities are unknown. Preliminary judgment is that he's not an enhancer. He appeared in the 8th Business District 2 hours ago. Check your equipment and let's go. Proya patted John on the shoulder with a kind smile. Don't worry, just stay behind me later, don't rush forward. The studio had a good tradition of cooperating against enemies, never fighting one-on-one when they could gang up. Then Robson gave John a wireless headset. It was said that this headset had many functions such as positioning and calling for help. It was small, lightweight, and easy to carry. It could also connect to teammate channels, making it a very practical piece of equipment. Because they were going to capture a fugitive, Robson didn't dare to drive his beloved car. John and the others were now in a modified bulletproof car that the studio used, with a high speed limit. The logistics team was using police surveillance to find the fugitive. Robson and his team got out of the car and prepared to search for him on foot. And not only that, this tasteless criminal was also littering, spitting everywhere, jaywalking, and destroying the greenery. John was even more convinced that he was indeed a vicious criminal. The most terrifying thing was that he was smoking cheap cigarettes worth no more than 20 jenny through his stockings in a public place. The refined and gentle Merk's mouth was full of vulgar language. Now he was already arguing with a gang. John felt that if he wasn't there, he would have been beaten to death sooner or later. Oh! There was a new situation. The person who had just been robbed turned out to be a gangster. Merk had already been surrounded by a group of burly gangsters. Rather than gangsters, they were more like a group of bosozoku. Visual K hair, ripped clothes, riding electric bikes that looked very impressive. Everyone was also smoking, looking even worse than Merk. No, John was wrong. They shouldn't be bosozoku, but more like a Chiao family from 10 years ago. John didn't know whether to stop this fight. John sent the location to the group. He notified them that he had found Merk and reported the situation. Don't be impulsive, John. Stay there and don't move, wait for me to come. Proya reminded him through voice. Without knowing the opponent's abilities, John really didn't dare to act rashly. Anon ball suddenly condensed in Merk's palm. John immediately used Gyo to observe carefully. Merk injected a lot of aura into the Nan ball. John was very curious, was this an emission type? Or a specialization type? One thing was very strange, why use so much aura to deal with these small punks? Could it be? John realized something. Body turns into thread. Merk's Nan bullet wasn't for those small punks. Confronting those small punks was just to build up a big move. Merk confronted the small punks. John was to see Merk's ability and wait for his teammates to arrive. He should have discovered John's existence long ago. He calculated that John would not dare to act rashly before his teammates arrived. In an instant, John understood. Merk's Nan bullet also flew over, but John had already predicted it through epitaph. John couldn't dodge this move. The nearest mirror was still some distance away. Bang! Boom! The Nan bullet exploded 5 centimeters in front of John, and the explosion engulfed the entire street. It had the power of a high explosive package. Proya and Robson, who heard the sound in the distance, sped up. Chapter 52. At the last moment, John didn't resist head-on, instead, John used Crimson King to erase his own time. During those 5 seconds of erased time, not even a nuclear bomb could kill John. However, if it's one's own time that's erased, then one can't move. John stood up from the ruins, and the dust and ash kicked up by the explosion slowly dissipated. The few small-time thugs were lying on the ground over there, their fates unknown. This alleyway leads to the 7th district. The perpetrator has escaped. I'm all right, quickly go to the 7th commercial district, John reported the situation into his earpiece. John himself also chased after them, but only took 2 steps. The small-time thugs lying dead ahead exploded. The power wasn't great, even weaker than the hand grenades on the black market. It was about the same as a homemade bomb, but the visual impact was enormous. Blood, internal organs, brains, feces, everything in the human body exploded. Time erase hadn't finished cooling down yet, and with such a close-range explosion, avoidance was impossible. John's Nen could easily withstand it. But John was splattered with blood and unknown bodily fluids. The scene was extremely bloody. The thick smell of blood and the horrifying scene made John nauseous and vomit. It's not that John hadn't killed people before, but it was the first time he'd seen such a bloody scene. Sendo Ripple Overdrive. John forcibly controlled his body, trying not to look at those fragments. Malak's Nen ability is very similar to Killer Queen, but it's still different. The human flesh bombs made by Malak's Nen ability shouldn't be remotely controlled. Otherwise, he should have waited for John to get closer before detonating them, which would have been more powerful. In other words, his Nen ability bombs should be timed or condition-based. Bastard, I'll kill you. John's killing intent boiled over. John immediately rushed up, but Malak had already run far away. John saw the scene before him and felt a chill. Fear, anger. Using Nen enhancement, John saw a terrifying scene. Hundreds of people and cars had been marked by Malak's Nen. Malak, who had run to the street corner, smiled. The 2 cars next to him exploded. Everyone on the street was frightened by the sudden explosion, and they ran like mad in the opposite direction of the street. John watched the surging crowd of people and cars. After blowing up the cars, Malak immediately took off his black coat, untied his gold chain, stuffed it in his pocket, took off the stockings on his head, and blended into another crowd of fleeing people going in the opposite direction. Damn it! Malak! Even the always refined and gentle John couldn't hold back. John felt so powerless for the first time. He couldn't save those marked ordinary people. The crowd, dominated by fear, arrived in an instant, engulfing John. Boom, 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 boom. The sound of explosions rang out, and everything Malak had marked, people, cars, everything began to explode. Some who hadn't been marked had their legs and arms blown off. Some who hadn't been killed were crawling on the blood-soaked ground, blood flowing like a river. Ah, 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 ah. John roared as he saw the scene before him. At the same time, Malak, who had successfully escaped, fled in disorder with the crowd. He knew that this location was the safest now. Surrounded by the crowd, protected by the crowd. These criminal hunters would definitely be hesitant to do anything to Malak in the crowd for fear of harming the innocent. But, a person walked against the flow of people and stood in front of Malak. Boss, I've found Malak, a man with glasses said calmly. Hearing this, Malak's heart sank. Malak immediately prepared to touch the people around him, marking them as bombs. The bespectacled man opened his mouth, and Malak felt a dangerous aura. Malak decisively stopped preparing to mark others, and turned his hand to block his face with his hands crossed. A water ball burst out of the glasses man's mouth. Ordinary people couldn't see the glasses man's spit water ball clearly. Malak was also blasted into the crowd 8 or 9 meters away by the water ball. Malak's arms were a little deformed from the impact. This was after Robson used hardening to barely block it. Malak shook his hand, feeling a little numb. Malak was very fortunate that he had blocked the blow, otherwise his head would have been blown open like a watermelon hit by a pistol. The bespectacled man was also very shocked. He could only fire 5 of those Nen-powered saliva water balls a day. They were very concealed and their power was comparable to a heavy sniper rifle. If he had only used Nen enhancement for defense, Malak was certain that his head would have exploded like a watermelon hit by a pistol. Malak had no more human flesh bombs to use. But Malak also saw that the bespectacled man's move couldn't be fired continuously. The bespectacled man, Rydell, knew that he could no longer handle it. His physical skills were very poor, and he could only put on a stance to scare Malak. But he didn't expect it to backfire and be guessed by Malak. The nun on Malak's hands surged out, and the bespectacled man, Rydell, retreated violently. With a boom, an explosion erupted. The power of this move was comparable to a high-explosive military grenade exploding 2 meters in front of Rydell. Rydell's hardening was not very proficient, and he was blown into the glass windows of the surrounding shops. The huge impact shattered the glass windows, and the bespectacled man, Rydell, fell on the glass shards in the store, bleeding from all 7 orifices. The power of this move was actually not as good as the non-bullet bomb he had just used on John. But John was cheating. The smoke from the explosion dissipated, and a person stepped on the charred road caused by the explosion and slowly approached the bespectacled man, Rydell, lying dead in the shop. The panicked shouts gradually faded away, and the sound of splitting air and cracking roads echoed in the empty street. Malak immediately turned sideways and jumped away, and a person punched where Malak had just been, making 3 sounds. The gusts of fist wind that were stirred up made Malak's heart palpitate. It was the enhancement type Proya who had arrived. He put his hands in front of his chest, clenched into a palm shape. This was the starting stance of the triple fist. The triple fist is a unique force-generating technique, the so-called 1 punch, 3 sounds, 1 punch, 3 forces, but it is difficult to achieve in actual combat. But Proya's hard work in triple fist has already been applied to actual combat. There are no more than 10 people in the world who have developed the triple fist to this point. Proya didn't give Malak time to react and rushed up, forcing Malak into close combat with him. At the same time, John stood on the corpses, with blood flowing like a river below. Countless cries, John could no longer calm down. Woola woola, the sound of police car sirens. There was also a black business car, a van, parked at the street corner. Hundreds of guns were pointed at John. Raise your hands. Chapter 53. Prow, as expected of a master of the enhancement, suppressed Malak of the emission, forcing him into constant retreat. Malak could only evade. Prow was considered a top-tier enhancer. Unlike a certain salted fish protagonist, Prow spent most of his time training his body. At 25, he had only learned Nen for 3 years but had already become the mainstay of Robson Studios' combat personnel. Prow had been learning karate since he was 6, and at 18, he defeated 8 adult senior brothers to earn full certification. He had challenged dozens of martial arts gyms and had a respectable record of 3 wins and 2 losses above the 200th floor of the Heavens Arena. 3 years ago, Robson brought him into the Hall of Nen cultivation at the Heavens Arena. Malak was completely different. He was 48 years old, born in the slums, or rather, abandoned in a garbage heap. No one knew how he survived. As society's trash, he lived at the very bottom, where everyone could insult and look down on him. Malak scavenged garbage and worked as a petty thief. At 18, he was beaten by a group of thugs for stealing, and in his utter despair, no one offered a helping hand. There were no heroes. At that moment, a thought sprouted in Malak's heart: I will kill those who beat me, kill those indifferent bystanders. Thus, in that cold winter, a demon was born. Malak awakened his Nen ability in his most painful moment. His highly aggressive tongue led to his Nen also being full of aggression. Explosion. That was Malak's first crime, and it felt good. Relying on his superpowers, Malak continued to commit crimes, gather followers, and become the king of that small town, the apex of darkness, and the nightmare of the townspeople. But until that day, a damned man named Jing Freaks came to the town as if on vacation. Malak's grand ambitions were all gone. Malak created a massive explosion, ordering all his subordinates to attack Jing Freaks, while a doppelganger that looked very much like himself drove away to escape, and he himself crawled down the sewer to escape the calamity. He lost everything. Now, he was a madman, a demon. He had been on the run for 5 whole years, using any means necessary to survive. Malak looked at Prow with a face full of madness, and he laughed. Malak was kicked away by Prow. You can't beat me. Malak wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Prow ignored him, rushing up and giving Malak no chance to fight back. You think I have no way to deal with people like you? Now you're doomed. Of course, Prow didn't listen to Malak's harsh words. He just took them as threats to scare people. Malak's eyes were bloodshot, revealing a look of madness. Prepare to die. Prow had already arrived in front of Malak, and Malak used hardening with all his might to block in front of his chest. But Prow's fist was less than 50 centimeters away from Malak. Prow's move was based on the same principle as Yuvajan's Big Bang Impact. In fact, Big Bang Impact was just attaching a large amount of Nen to the fist and then delivering a straight punch. Although Prow's Nen quantity and physical fitness were not as good as Yuvajan's, Prow used a triple fist, which was quite powerful. But the only one who will die is you. Prow still roared and threw a punch. Enhancers are mostly headstrong, iron-headed, and ready to trade their lives with you. Prow was actually confident that as an enhancer, his physical fitness was good enough to block this attack. It's you who's going to die. Malak detonated the Nen in front of his body. A violent explosion came again. Prow staggered back several steps, kneeling on the ground from the blast, with large areas of skin burned and covered in blood. Pwahahaha, as expected, the one who laughs last is still me. You little punk. Malak laughed maniacally. Malak could only mark people and things without Nen protection. Once there was interference from other Nen, it would lose its effect. Although Malak's Nen bombs could not be remotely controlled, he could preset the explosion time. The explosion of Malak's released Nen would indeed cause some damage to himself, so before, Malak had always released the Nen before detonating it. But similarly, the damage to himself from the Nen explosion at that distance was far lower than to others. This was why Malak dared to detonate Nen in front of his chest. Malak got up from the ground, walking towards Prow while laughing. Just then, a furious shout rang out. Stop! A girl ran over, panting, Prow, why didn't you act with me? Fighting tattoo. A Nen beast resembling King Yama emerged from the girl's body and flew onto Prow. It was a black, linear Nen beast that leaned against Prow, gradually merging into Prow's body, actually turning into a tattoo on Prow's body. Prow suddenly stood up as if he had recovered, but the wounds on his body did not heal. Prow's aura soared, even stronger than his previous peak state. Another Nen beast flew out of the girl's body, a tiger with a hanging gaze and white forehead, as if painted with ink wash, smaller in size than the Yama just now. The tiger with the hanging gaze and white forehead surged into the body of the guy with glasses, and the guy with glasses also staggered to his feet. Although the smile had disappeared, Malak was not panicked. I'm not afraid of you at all now. I want to thank you. Thank you for giving me so much pressure just now. I just understood something. Malak said as if chanting. Prow didn't like to be with this kind of flammable social garbage. He still punched Malak in the old face. During the fight with you, I thought of a trick. Today, I'll use this to destroy you all. A large amount of Nen gathered on Malak's feet, and part of the Nen exploded instantly, generating huge thrust. He arrived in front of Malak almost instantly. If John were here, he would definitely complain that Malak was plagiarizing Bakugo's idea. Malak's hands also gathered a large amount of Nen, and the palms faced Prow, with the Nen on the back of the palms exploding. At the same time, Prow also punched Malak. Malak exploded again on his feet, and Malak flew to the side, with a series of explosions constantly changing direction. For a time, the sound of explosions, the sound of glass shattering, and the muffled sound of fists hitting cement played the most chaotic movement of this night. Prow suddenly realized Malak's intention. But it was too late. Malak's real target was not Prow but the girl who had just given him Nen reinforcement. Prow was 13 meters away from the girl, Malak was 5 meters away, and the guy with glasses was only 2 meters away from the girl. The guy with glasses spat out a water ball again, but Malak had already seen this move before. He could see the trajectory of the water ball through the shape of the guy with glasses' mouth. Robson exploded to the side again, dodging the water ball from the guy with glasses. But the guy with glasses' movements did not stop. He had already picked up an axe. Malak looked at the guy with glasses contemptuously. Malak was confident that he could kill the guy with glasses before the axe attacked him. Prow's breaking ability was far less than Malak's, who was propelled by explosions. But the guy with glasses didn't swing the axe at Malak. His axe chopped at the fire hydrant. Although the guy with glasses was not an enhancer, the axe with Nen attached still split the fire hydrant. On the other side of the city, police cars, ambulances, and gang-specific cars blocked the street. Armed helicopters soared in the sky. John stepped out of the river of blood step by step. Move one more step and I'll kill you. Give up resistance, stand there and don't move. John seemed not to hear. Mainly because he knew they couldn't kill him with the mirror in his hand. Stop. He is my employee. A figure flew from the top of the building and landed in front of John. Chapter 54. The axe split open the fire hydrant, and water gushed out. Marek couldn't understand what was happening, but he was determined to overcome any changes with his explosive power. The spraying water seemed to have a soul, not scattering in the air, but gathering and folding back. It formed a thin wall of water in front of the girl and the man with glasses. The man with glasses was a manipulator-type non-user, able to control water. The water wall in front of them was condensed with all of his Nen, and Marek's explosion was imminent. Boom! The explosion sounded, water splashed everywhere, the water wall shattered, and the man with glasses and the girl flew backward, crashing into the wall. But in reality, they weren't seriously injured. The high temperature of the explosion had been neutralized by the water wall, and the impact of the explosion was greatly reduced. Coupled with their own Ren, they only suffered minor scrapes. This was just a hastily made water wall by the man with glasses. The fire hydrant had just been broken open, and not much water had sprayed out, which had to be divided between the two to make the water wall. If there was enough water, the man with glasses was confident that he could block this attack without injury. But it was enough, Proya had arrived. Marek had just unleashed so many powerful moves, logically, his Nen should have been exhausted long ago. But Marek didn't seem tired at all, and Marek's Nen instantly became even stronger. The power of his moves was also amplified. In this situation, Marek would be taken down sooner or later. Now he only had one path, and that was limitation and vow. Limitation and vow was like a cheat, a way to instantly boost one's Nen ability. Gon used this to defeat Neferpitu, who was several times stronger than him. Kurapika also used limitation and vow shortly after learning Nen to forcibly cheat and defeat Yuvajin, sealing the leader of the Phantom Troop. This was a legal bug in the hunter world, but many people didn't use this trick. Limitation and vow required a strong conviction to activate. The greater and more stringent the vow, the greater the power gained. Marek's conviction was to kill all the pursuers and escape. As for the after effects, Marek himself didn't know. Even Proya, who had been amplified, was suppressed by Marek. Proya didn't know limitation and vow, ordinary teachers wouldn't teach this technique. It was a foolish move that drained the pond to catch the fish, harming one's own talent. At the same time, on another street, John and Robson stood together, facing more than 100 special riot police, more than 200 gang members, and 2 armed helicopters. We are arresting a fugitive. This wasn't done by him, we are legitimate bounty hunters. Robson took out his hunter license and related documents. But they were unmoved. Robson believed that as long as he made any excessive move, those hundreds of guns would fire without hesitation. Robson turned around and slapped John. Damn it, how long are you going to be depressed? So many of them died, John said angrily. Damn it. Looking at the people surrounding the entire street, Robson was also very angry. No, we have to get out of here quickly, or they'll be in danger. How do we get out? Robson was also momentarily flustered. At this moment, the police chief's phone rang. The police chief wanted to hang up the phone. But seeing the caller ID on the phone, the police chief gave up on this idea. He answered the phone tremulously. That lord wants you to release this kid. That lord will be responsible for everything. By the way, tell those punks to think it over. I understand. The other side of the phone had already hung up. Cold sweat was still flowing from the police chief. He almost ordered John and Robson to fire just now. He didn't expect them to be that lord's people. No wonder they didn't take so many people of his seriously at all. Clear the way. Medics prepare for rescue. All vehicles, whether police or gang, made way. This baffled Robson and John, who were preparing to break through violently. What exactly happened? But there was no time to think about it. Both of them rushed to the area where Proya and Marek were fighting at the fastest speed. At the same time, in a distant mansion, a strong man was bowing to an ugly old man. Lord, everything has been taken care of, the strong man said humbly. The old man in pajamas looked at John running on TV without saying a word. He held a framed portrait that looked somewhat old. It was a sketch portrait. John Joestar. The old man murmured in a voice only he could hear. The old man put down the framed sketch. It was of 2 men, one of whom looked 80% like John. The scene continued to shift to the place where Marek and Proya were fighting. Proya's triple impact fist was dodged by Marek using an explosive change of direction as usual. But Proya's punches became more and more urgent, but they were always dodged by Marek. Proya immediately pursued, and the 1-inch punch only lightly grazed Marek's body, but Marek was sent flying, breaking 3 ribs. "You've lost, kid!" Marek shouted madly. Suddenly, the gravel under Proya's feet exploded. Proya wasn't seriously injured, but the fulcrum under his feet had been destroyed. Proya lost his balance due to the sudden explosion and fell forward. All Proya could see in front of him was an bullet. In just this moment, Marek counterattacked. "I'm going to die." At this moment, the tattooed beast attached to Proya's body swam to Proya's face. The beast jumped out of Proya's skin, blocking in front of Proya. With a bang, the inman beast turned into a puddle of ink and splashed on the ground. Proya was also blasted away, losing consciousness. The girl also suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing Proya fall powerlessly to the ground, Marek was very happy. The biggest trouble was gone. But Marek didn't plan to continue killing the man with glasses and the girl. He knew that the longer he delayed, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. Who knew if they had any other reinforcements? The street was already empty. Now, walking on the street again would definitely be discovered, and those surveillance cameras would definitely capture him. Marek created an bullet and placed it on the ground, then detonated the bullet, using the splashing smoke to cover himself as he rushed to the nearest sewer manhole cover. An bullet hit in front of Marek. "You bastard hit my little brother and thought you could run away." Marek turned his head to look at the direction from which the bullet flew. The smoke of the explosion slowly dissipated, and a figure jumped down from the yellow street lamp. Thud, 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 with each step, that person's aura rose by 1 level. A sense of crisis surged into Marek's heart. This man was completely different from the few just now. If he was still in his prime, he could still fight, but now his nin had been consumed a lot. "You scum of the earth, flammable garbage, something even more lowly than maggots eating feces. You don't have the right to go to the sewer." The smoke completely dissipated. It was Robson. He had arrived by firing nin to propel himself. Chapter 55. Updating with great effort. You can click the report error button below to urge an update. After reporting error, the system will automatically repair it within 2 minutes. If it cannot be repaired after 2 minutes, manual repair is required, which may take 1-3 days. Sometimes the editor can't find a source to update, so please be patient. The editor understands everyone's feelings very well. It is recommended to find a few more books to read alternately, so you won't have to wait too hard. If you like this book, then share it. The more people read the novel, the faster the editor will update. Please bookmark this page for easy reading next time. Warm reminder, using the bookshelf and reading history is more convenient. Chapter 56. Malak felt despair once again. How many more people are there? When was the last time? The last time was when that man named Jin brought them. Under the aura that Jin emitted, Malak felt a sense of powerlessness for the first time since gaining his nin ability. It was an overwhelming power that he couldn't possibly overcome. Just like Nobu, who sensed Pufu's sinister nin, he had no desire to resist. The nin aura released by Jin, after witnessing Malak's violence, was Robson's eternal nightmare. Now he was experiencing it again. Robson's strength and nin were inferior to Jin's. But Malak's current condition was very poor. His nin had been depleted by 80%, and several of his ribs were broken. Robson held one hand in front of him, and an nin ball the size of a basketball quickly formed on his hand. With a whoosh, the nin ball flew towards Malak, but with preparation, Malak was confident he could dodge it. Malak faced his palm towards the side of his body. With a bang, an explosion occurred, and Malak used the explosive force to dodge. Robson flicked his fingers, and the nin ball suddenly reversed direction. Malak, worthy of being a desperate fugitive, held his hands horizontally in front of him, and also threw out a nin ball. With a bang, Malak's nin ball exploded upon contact with Robson's nin ball. Robson smiled, his goal achieved. Malak had defeated so many subordinates, he must have a few tricks up his sleeve. Malak actually faintly sensed Robson's guidance. Robson was using nin balls to lead Malak away from Prau and the others. The support team staying at headquarters had already called an ambulance, but Malak had to be led away, otherwise the medical staff would be in danger. He absolutely couldn't let Malak take hostages again, Robson was determined. Malak was actually running in that direction all along. Malak and Robson were in agreement on this point, but Malak wouldn't let Robson see his intentions. 5 meters, 4 meters, 3 meters. Suddenly, an explosion occurred under Malak's feet, and Malak's body flew up. He jumped over a car, pressing his hand on the roof. With a bang, the car exploded. This was a labor-saving method, using only a little NaN to create a huge explosion effect. Moreover, the pollution caused by a car explosion far exceeded that produced by Malak detonating his own NaN. If Malak was attacking, then the smoke would undoubtedly hinder the subsequent attack. But for escape, it was the best smoke screen. A car explosion is completely different from an NaN gas bomb. After an NaN gas bomb explodes, it's gone. After a car explodes, it continues to burn and produces toxic gases. Malak's marker bombs do not explode the object itself, but the released NaN. In fact, Malak's NaN is like a bomb, it can penetrate things without NaN, but the power still depends on how much NaN Malak uses. Rather than saying Malak's ability is like Killer Queen, it's more like the explosion man Mr. 5 from One Piece. Malak repeated the trick and detonated several more cars, but Robson didn't panic. He could still see Malak. Robson used NaN to extinguish the burning cars. Robson was only in his 30s, and his NaN ability was very ordinary, with no special characteristics. But he had a very powerful ability to control his NaN. His NaN quantity was not very large, his physical fitness was also average, but his fighting skills were good. But Robson's real strength lay in his control over NaN abilities. Robson's first mission was to assist another professional hunter. That professional hunter was a leading figure in NaN ability and a good friend of Chairman Netero. It is said that he was also the NaN ability mentor of the famous ruins hunter, Jin. Robson's control over NaN ranks in the top 50 in the world. He can also control NaN bullets that have already been fired. The efficient use of limited NaN ability is Robson's capital. But the high frequency of explosions here still attracted the attention of the police. The police, who had just received a notification from surrounding John, rushed here in a hurry. Ha ha ha, I really shouldn't be dead. Malak laughed maniacally. He ran towards the police car, using the power of explosions to advance frantically. Malak completely ignored the NaN bullets chasing behind him. Malak fully activated the power of the explosion to approach the police car, and the NaN bullets behind him couldn't keep up at all. Malak kicked open the door of the police car and pulled a policeman out. The car turned its head and started to run. Not only that, but 5 or 6 NaN bullets flew out of the car window and crashed into other police cars around. Robson immediately used NaN bullets to pursue Malak. Bang, 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 many explosions, all the police cars were burning and exploding. So many and dense car explosions, the smoke blocked Robson's vision at once, and Robson couldn't continue to control the NaN bullets either. People in several surrounding blocks were evacuated. Robson immediately drove into a street, intending to find the crowd. But 300 meters away, Malak saw someone he didn't expect. Yes, it was John. Malak's initial explosive NaN bullets were extremely powerful, unless it was an enhancer or certain conjurers could block them. But John had no injuries on his body except for blood stains. Malak immediately braked and prepared to run in another direction. John hadn't been in this city for long and wasn't familiar with it. Robson ran too fast, John couldn't understand the map, and everyone here had run away, there wasn't even anyone to ask for directions. Hey, why is there a police car in front? No, John, with the extraordinary vision of Stone Free, saw that the door on the police car was gone. The person sitting in the police car was not a policeman, but the fugitive Malak that John was thinking about. Malak, don't run. John started chasing like crazy. Emperor. Sexy pistols. A gun materialized in John's hand. Bang, 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 4 shots exploded the 3 tires of the car, and the car couldn't be controlled and crashed to the side. The last shot hit the car's fuel tank. Malak immediately jumped out of the car. The car, without anyone controlling it, crashed into a store next to the road and exploded. Malak wasn't that panicked now, because conjurers, especially John, when conjuring such a small pistol, the Emperor's main body is a pistol, meant that John's attack power wouldn't be particularly strong. The only thing to worry about was whether it would take too much time to deal with John, and it wouldn't be good if Robson caught up. Malak accelerated through explosions, quickly approaching John. It was too far, John's powerful stands with strong attack power had very low range. The only stand that can attack now is Emperor, John fired frantically. It's useless to attack vital points, the NaN in vital points is much more than in other parts. John immediately changed his strategy, letting the bullets that originally attacked vital points attack Malek's calves and other non-vital points. But Malek didn't use hardening, the non-vital points were also covered with Nin. This is the advanced use of Nin, that is flow. The bullets can only cause very little damage. Malek smiled, as expected, I'm the one who survives in the end. John was very angry, the damn fugitive was approaching Stone Free's range. 40 meters, 30 meters, 20 meters. Robson was covered in blood holes from the bullets, although they didn't hurt the inside, they still hit 1 or 2 centimeters under the skin, and would still bleed. Malek laughed wildly, bathing in his own blood. He approached John amidst the explosions. Chapter 57. Your disgusting evil is revolting. However, Malik didn't listen to John's nonsense. John retracted the Emperor, his face showing no trace of panic. Malik sensed a feeling of unease. Why isn't he afraid? Why is he so calm when the gun I manifested is useless against him? But John didn't give Malik time to delve into philosophy. Stone Free. A blue figure appeared in front of John. Malik hurriedly tried to activate an energy explosion in his hand, but suddenly found that his body was covered in fine, dense white lines. String mummy. This was an upgraded version of string binding, adding elastic ripple walk and to strengthen the string's intensity. Few could break through the restraints of the current string mummy. Next, Stone Free's fingers slowly clenched into a fist. John had decided to unleash a 5-minute barrage of aura attacks on Malik. But a sudden change occurred. An ominous Nin emerged from Malik's restrained body. John immediately used Epitaph. John saw the future and immediately cancelled String Mummy, but it was too late. Almost at the same time as John released String Mummy, Malik exploded. This far exceeded John's expectations. He instinctively regarded Malik as Killer Queen, but in reality, the two were different. Killer Queen wouldn't dare detonate a bomb it made so close to itself. In the face of an explosion, everyone is equal, whether it's Killer Queen as the bomb maker or others being attacked. The power that Malik himself endured from the explosion he created was less than 1/10 of what others would suffer under the same circumstances. This meant that Malik could forcibly trade injuries with his opponent. This was John's intelligence failure. John naturally equated Malik with Kira Yoshikij's Killer Queen. Malik's self-destruction was very successful this time. John was caught off guard and suffered a great injury. John had attached an energy to the strings, which prevented him from being directly eliminated. Although the explosion was very painful, John still used Stone Free to counterattack. Malik, who had just self-destructed, had a weaker Nin aura around him, reducing his defense. He solidly took 4 punches from Stone Free and flew backward. Malik knelt on the ground, his consciousness somewhat blurred. The fist that was comparable to the enhancement type just now struck his face unprepared. Malik's facial bones were almost shattered. Malik's nose was completely collapsed, several teeth were broken, and his mouth and nose were full of blood and foam. John's initial use of the Emperor misled Malik, making him think that John could only manifest handguns. In fact, if he calmed down and thought slowly, he would realize that John, who could withstand his Nin energy bomb without injury, obviously had some tricks up his sleeve. Malik was unable to remain calm due to his fear of the pursuer Robson behind him. John's breathing was steady. Sendo Ripple Walk was slowly repairing the wound. John was now afraid to rashly approach Malik, who could self-destruct. Of course, Malik didn't dare to approach John either. After all, Stone Free's fist almost made him lose consciousness just now. John's only ranged attack was the Emperor, but its power was too weak. Malik's ranged attack was an energy bomb, which was very powerful but couldn't hit John, who possessed both Mirror Man and Crimson King. Both sides actually found it difficult to inflict effective damage on each other. But the situation was more favorable to John, because Robson was still on his way, while Malik was isolated and helpless. Once Robson arrived, Malik would be in a 1-on-2 situation. Another annoying thing was that John mostly dodged Malik's attacks without injury, but John's bullets always managed to injure Malik. In fact, the bullets of the Emperor stand weren't very powerful, but John also used sexy pistols to change the trajectory or accelerate the fired bullets. The accelerated bullets could break through Malik's Nin. After only 5 seconds of confrontation, Malik had more than a dozen more wounds on his body. He realized that he couldn't take down John all at once and decisively turned around to escape. Malik swiped his hand forward, and more than a dozen ping-pong ball-sized Nin bullets floated in the air. These were delayed explosion type Nin bullets, used to hinder John's pursuit. In the distance, Robson also appeared at the intersection of this street. This time, Robson didn't use the highly flexible NAN bullets, but instead used a faster NAN energy laser beam. Although the NAN energy laser beam didn't reach the true speed of light, it was still 3 times the speed of sound. Malik barely managed to dodge it, but Malik's left shoulder didn't escape the scorching of the NAN energy laser beam. Even using flow, Malik couldn't block Robson's laser beam, and a bowl-sized hole was burned through his left shoulder. At this time, the NAN energy bullets behind Malik also exploded. John's vision was obstructed. Robson was panting heavily. Robson didn't have a lot of NAN energy. The NAN energy laser beam just now had very strong attack power, but it consumed too much NAN energy. The consumption of the NAN energy laser beam was comparable to releasing 15 basketball-sized NAN energy bullets in one breath, but its power was unquestionable. In fact, even if Malik used hardening, he wouldn't be able to block it, but Robson couldn't fire continuously in a short period of time. Malik was also frightened out of his wits and ran to the shop next to him. Malik darted into the shop next door, pressed his right hand against the wall, and with a bang, the wall was blown open. The explosion of the NAN energy bomb just now had passed, and John also chased after Malik, while the Emperor brand pistol in his hand fired several shots to automatically pursue Malik. Robson was quite far away, but he also ran over. The bullets formed a straight line, striking Marek's weaker thighs. John's bullet sank into Marek's right leg. Because Marek's leg muscles were damaged, Marek's right foot instantly lost its strength, and he fell to the ground with a clang. Marek's left shoulder was still spurting blood, and the wounds John had inflicted on his body were also bleeding. After a long period of intense fighting, there was no time to treat the wounds. Marek was delirious and hallucinating due to excessive blood loss and injuries. He was at the end of his rope. John stopped 10 meters away from Marek. Getting closer would enter his self-destruction range. 10 meters was just right. He could retreat to avoid the NAN gas bomb and advance to prevent Marek from escaping. This distance was called safety. However, John did not stop shooting Marek frantically with the Emperor pistol in his hand. Although John's shooting skills were terrible, the Emperor could correct the trajectory of the bullets on its own. Because of despair and the collapse of his beliefs, Marek couldn't even maintain a steady flow of NAN. Many of John's bullets directly broke through Marek's defenses. Robson, who had arrived, also threw a NAN bullet. Marek dodged the NAN bullet by causing an explosion beneath him, but the dodged NAN bullet turned around and hit Marek again. Marek, using flow, flew 5 or 6 meters, and several more ribs should have been broken. Marek was stern, the aura of death had already appeared on him. Marek grabbed the nearby sewer cover and jumped into it. Is he trying to escape through the sewer's water flow? We still have a lot of stamina, we're not afraid of him escaping. Moreover, it just rained yesterday, and the sewer's water flow is very strong. Trying to escape through this water flow is a certain death, John analyzed calmly. No, just now, that was the aura of death. He probably didn't plan to escape alive from the moment he went in. Moreover, the injured area of his wounds is very large. Without surgery, they can't be cleaned properly. If he enters the water teeming with bacteria, he will definitely get infected and die. Moreover, he probably doesn't have the strength to survive in such a turbulent current. He knows we will never let him go. There's a lot of methane in the sewer. It will explode if it encounters an open flame. His plan might be to drag us in. Robson explained his view to John. John was silent for 3 seconds. I have a way to kill him without injury, but this move is one of my trump cards. You can. I understand. I'll avoid it. Robson expressed his understanding. Many people have their secret ultimate moves. Skills like Phaeton's Pain Packer and Sphinx's Round Heaven Fist are all skills of the first encounter kill level. If you know their power in advance, their power will be greatly reduced. Among non-users, precautions must be taken to prevent the leakage of ability information. Robson tactfully turned away and didn't look. Give me 6 minutes, and I can take care of Marek. Such a long time. Yes. John nodded in response, and Robson didn't look any further. In fact, Robson's understanding was wrong. John didn't have such an ultimate move. John threw a lot of glass shards into the well. Then, he used Mirror Man to sneak into the mirror world. Sure enough, as Robson expected, Marek did not jump into the dangerous sewer current to escape but was sticking to the wall, slowly waiting. A piece of mirror shone on Marek, who was waiting for an opportunity. Marek suddenly felt dizzy, and it was as if the scene had changed. The surrounding scenery didn't change at all. No, that's not right. He found that the brat who had been shooting above was right in front of him. Marek guessed it. Brat, you're going to die. I didn't expect that senior above you would send you to die. It's you who's going to die, John said calmly. Marek smiled with relief. This was a smile before death. He didn't regret what he had done before he died. Why did you kill those ordinary people? Marek tilted his head. I didn't want to kill them, but the more chaotic the situation, the greater my chances of escape. Marek looked at John calmly. It's okay, I've finished asking. John lowered his eyes and looked at his watch. 1 minute has already passed. It's time to end it. John slowly approached Marek, who was sitting on the ground. Sayonara. Goodbye. A burst of energy erupted from Marek's body, and it exploded. However, nothing happened. Marek's expression froze. This deviated from the script he had set. Of course, John wouldn't explain to him that in the mirror world, no one except John himself could change any inanimate objects, including methane. When Marek felt dizzy just now, John had pulled Marek into the mirror world. Why didn't the methane-filled sewer explode? This question plagued Marek's mind, but he didn't have the qualifications to think any further. Because Aura 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 aura. John looked at the humanoid blob that could only be vaguely seen and exited the mirror world. Chapter 58. With the fugitive Malak dealt with, too many things happened this day. It was John's first confrontation with a real desperate thug, and John was caught off guard. In the end, John is just an ordinary person who is out of place in the hunter world. If it weren't for the game system as a cheat, he would have died long ago. He wasn't ready to be killed. John's growth is just that his methods have become darker, and he won't be timid towards some villains. In fact, if the cheat was given to other people, they could do it, or even do it better. Because many people were injured during the pursuit of Malak, the direct economic loss was several hundred million. However, Robson's studio doesn't have to pay for this money, the city itself provided it. The gang that was bombed even took out a sum of money to give to Robson and John, thanking John for avenging them. Actually, those few punks aren't worth that much, and it feels like there's some kind of conspiracy. But based on the principle of don't be a fool if there's a benefit to be had, John gladly accepted it. This time, it caused 238 deaths, of which 42 died due to untimely treatment, and 103 were injured. The only fortunate thing is that no one in Robson's team died. Glasses Man and Proya were seriously injured and need to be hospitalized, unable to participate in missions for half a year. The girl and John were slightly injured and will be fine after a few days of rest. In fact, John relied on Ripple Qigong and Pearl Jam to recover completely that night. Proya was not injured. He went to the association to report that this fugitive was clearly underestimated. Malak's hazard level needs to be raised, at least to the level of an A-class fugitive. By the way, the original evaluation of Malak by the association was C. However, after this incident, the members of Robson's studio became very respectful to John. The game trio sighed one after another that John had betrayed the revolution. Robson also mentioned that Malak was ultimately solved independently by John, regardless of whether Malak had been weakened or not. It doesn't hinder the studio's worship of John at all. The recently busy Robson has just become free because John was too angry and beat Malak for too long with Stone Freeze strength and speed both at A, making it completely unrecognizable. In the end, it was determined to be him through DNA testing. John is also free now. In fact, if John acted alone, there wouldn't be so many things. He could directly pull the opponent into the mirror world, then erase time and then use King Crimson, whose power is extremely terrifying, to kill him with one blow. However, whether it is the Mirror Man or King Crimson, John dare not use them in front of others. As for Malak's bounty, John didn't take a penny, and gave it all to Glasses Man and Proya. After all, they risked their lives to pursue Malak. After several battles in the Heavens Arena, John has accumulated a large amount of Jenny in his bank account. The purchasing power of Jenny is similar to that of the Japanese yen. Now John's savings are about the same as 20 million RMB in his previous life in terms of purchasing power. John doesn't care about this little bit. John is now starting devil training again, exercising his body and practicing Ripple Qigong. Iron Ripple, Flowing Stance. In fact, defeating Malak only earned one more all-purpose card's worth of coins than the flame man John encountered in the Heavens Arena. Now John has saved up 5 all-purpose cards worth of coins. It's time to draw another wave of cards. John emptied his mind, adjusted his breathing, and opened the game system interface in his mind. It's still the familiar recipe, still the familiar taste. John's heart didn't have the slightest ripple. Okay, the first one, drawn. It's an item card, Self-Portrait of Northwest Old Man, a self-portrait drawn by the famous mangaka Kishive Rohan using Heaven's Door, without any special abilities. Looking at the Northwest Old Man with the forgiveness green hair posing in a coquettish pose, John forgave him. Come on, open the second one. It's another item card, Yoshikage Kira's suit, a suit of an ordinary office worker, making people feel capable and ordinary. It's the costume of the 4th part's boss, without special abilities. John can't wear it yet. Yoshikage Kira is 1.8 meters tall, and John is only 13 years old now, so he can't wear it. Another piece of trash. The third card made John surprised and then disappointed. Small Aya, the red stone that Kars found in the pharaoh's tomb, is also a naturally produced beautiful gem that can amplify ripple Qi Gong. It is smaller than the perfect Aya red stone and not enough to turn the pillar men into perfect creatures. John was startled and almost thought he could stop being human. The third card has also been opened, and it is very surprising that it is a stand card. The stand card has special effects. The whole card is black, a golden light flashes, and the black card gradually lights up. A silver-white, elegant stand appears in the card. Silver Chariot, it is a product of the stand system when it was not yet perfect. Silver Chariot has no special abilities in ordinary situations. Its speed is infinitely close to Jotaro's Star Platinum, and its sword speed can create a vacuum. It can also reduce defense and increase speed by removing its armor, and it can also shoot the sword in its hand. Destructive power, C. Speed, A. Persistence, B. Range, C. Precision, B. Growth, C. This is Jean-Pierre Polnareff's stand, a member of the Egypt Stardust Crusaders, and the only non-Joestar bloodline to survive in Dio's mansion. In the 5th part, his legs were broken by Diavolo, and he eventually became Turtle Polnareff. Suddenly, he found a note on the back of the card, staying inside for a day can grant you a fragment of the Villain Savior title, 1/3. The Villain Savior title can increase your charm in front of villains and can also make some ordinary people with unsteady will kowtow and worship you. Well, it's still quite troublesome to throw away the coffin, so let's keep it for now. The 5th card is another stand card, the familiar light appears again, and the figure inside slowly appears. Aerosmith, also known as aerial sniper, flies like a toy plane, carrying bullets and bombs. It comes with a carbon dioxide radar, relying on the breathing of people and animals to track enemies. Destructive power, A. Speed, B. Range, dozens of meters. Durability, C. Precision, E. Growth, C. Because the precision is too low, it can only hurt the enemy by attacking randomly most of the time. It appeared in the 5th part, Golden Wind, and the stand user is a genius child named Narancia, who is also a member of the protagonist group. This stand is very useless. The noise is loud in the air, and it is a living target for people with release abilities. Moreover, Aerosmith's skin is very fragile. Fortunately, Silver Chariot is there to guarantee it, so John is not very disappointed. John happily peeled an apple. Seeing his teammates lying in bed already asleep, John had no choice but to put the peeled apple into his own mouth. The door of the inpatient department was opened. It was Robson. John, come out for a moment. What's the matter? Chapter 59. Robson sought out John to question him mainly because he had seen John manifest Emperor during the pursuit of Malak. Robson was very worried that John would go down the wrong path. In Robson's view, John should honestly develop Stone Free, that was the king's way. In fact, Stone Free has a bonus to manipulation type non abilities, but John doesn't train it much. The control ability brought by Stone Free has great limitations. The strings of Stone Free can only control people far weaker than himself. Now, John can only control ordinary people who don't know Nen, and cannot control inanimate objects such as cars. In fact, the most suitable objects for Stone Free to control are human puppets and corpses, which are easy to control because they have no resistance. But having corpses around to control at all times is too perverted. John cannot accept it, whether psychologically or physiologically. John superficially accepted Robson's suggestion, because, due to NaN, the upper limit of each stand has been raised. John also came out of the hospital. John put on his weighted gear and began to exercise, running from the hospital in the city to the suburbs. Of course, he needed to maintain ripple breathing. Although Robson's studio has more complete exercise equipment that would allow for better training, John decided to run to the suburbs because there was no way to experiment with new stand abilities in the studio. In fact, John ran to what was no longer the suburbs, but an abandoned, unfinished building area. It was located in the suburbs of your new city, and there wasn't even a bus stop nearby. For several kilometers, no one lived there, possibly because of inconvenient transportation. John didn't bother to delve into it. But this was indeed a good place to experiment with stands. There were few people here, let alone any surveillance cameras. Some important places in your new city are filled with surveillance cameras. Both stands and NaN abilities can be filmed by surveillance cameras. There aren't even people here, let alone cameras. Of course, it is not known whether this is the place the Phantom Troop used in later years. It's so big here, who knows which building they chose. As a precaution, John summoned Aerosmith, confirming that there were no human presences around. Silver Chariot. A silver figure of elegant appearance appeared beside John, like a nobleman described in novels, holding his sword upright in front of him, one hand on his hip. Silver Chariot's hand holding the sword trembled, and a burst of chaotic sword light flashed, and the concrete wall in front of him was cut into several pieces. In fact, John doesn't quite understand why Silver Chariot's destructive power is C on the panel. John feels that Silver Chariot's destructive power should be at least B. Silver Chariot's attack speed is terrifyingly fast. In the original work, even the Oingo Boingo brothers, whose movement speed was close to the speed of light, were pierced by Silver Chariot. In fact, Silver Chariot's strength is just so-so. Cutting cement walls is fine, but cutting steel is difficult. Although Silver Chariot's strength is C, the speed bonus completely makes up for it against stands like Steel Chain, which have both power and speed at A. Silver Chariot is also one of the few stands that can develop Requiem. Silver Chariot itself is very powerful, and only a few stands can be faster than it in terms of speed. John was actually just reacting normally like a child seeing a new toy. To be honest, as long as one endures and chooses a good location in the Hunter world, there is no danger from the current plot. Unlike the Dragon Ball world, where planet-busting powerhouses are everywhere and the Earth faces the danger of being blown up countless times, or the Ninja Scroll world with a behind-the-scenes world destroying Big Boss. Most areas of the Hunter world are still very peaceful. As long as you don't provoke the Phantom Troop, don't go head-to-head with those powerful NaN users, don't mess around in the Chimera Ant Nest, and don't participate in exploring the Dark Continent, everything is still very stable. Even if you go to these places, as long as you are not instantly killed, you can use Time Erase plus Man in the Mirror to escape. But John's mentality has changed. People become somewhat inflated after gaining power. John wants to help ordinary people as much as he can without harming himself. Like in the battle with Malak, John actually saved 6 people. They were marked by Malak's NaN, but John knocked them unconscious with stone free and threw them into the mirror world, saving their lives. Man in the mirror can expel NaN that has already been released, but NaN is continuously produced by the human body. NaN users can still extract NaN from their bodies after entering. John used this principle to remove the NaN bomb from the human body. Of course, if the one killing people in the street was Mahazaldik or the Ant King, John would run as far as possible. John is still very clear on this point, saving people cannot cost one's own life. John doesn't mind helping others, but this is based on the premise that he won't die. John has also been training Man in the Mirror's pulling speed recently, but there has been no progress. John is now training his NaN according to the training methods of his master Wilhelm and Bisky from the manga. John learned all the techniques of NaN application from Wilhelm, but he cannot use them freely. It's like knowing how to read every word, but stuttering when communicating with English speakers. John can only be considered Wilhelm's nominal disciple, not a true disciple. John hasn't learned many of his master's special moves, not because Wilhelm doesn't want to teach him. John's physical fitness is not outstanding in the monster-filled Hunter world, while Wilhelm is known for his terrifying physical fitness. Wilhelm is a qualified teacher. John's main means of attack in the future will definitely be stands, not his own fists. John must develop his own style. Wilhelm was afraid of teaching John the wrong way, so he didn't teach him. It's like teaching Phaeton's rising sun to Finks. Is there any point? It's better to increase speed. A stand's power and speed are several times that of the user, and they also have special effects. John would be crazy to give up stance and learn Wilhelm's close combat skills. John did comprehend a set of snakeskin footwork on his own, using stone freeze string form. John's title at the Heavens Arena is now Snake Man, but John has only used it a few times, especially after coming out of the Heavens Arena, he hasn't used it at all. This move works well against enhancers and emitters, but he didn't dare to show it off when fighting Illumi. There were many flaws in the footwork he had just comprehended, so he used King Crimson for safety. There was no need for this footwork to pursue Malak. Moreover, this footwork is too grotesque. You all think Luffy is cool, but if a real person appeared in front of you and used those moves, it would be a different story. Life still goes on, and there will be missions every few days, but they are all ordinary people. These terrorists return to the right path under Stone Freeze Aura Iron Fist. What is worth noting is that John recently had a conflict with the Mafia. The Mafia is, after all, the Mafia. But interestingly, they didn't bother John after being beaten, which made John wait in vain. Chapter 60. The city at night was bustling with traffic. Office workers, burdened by a day's work, released their inner frustrations by eating, shopping, and indulging. This was actually the liveliest time of day. This city was a haven for gangs, but strangely, the security was very good, unlike the free America of my previous life, where gunfights happened every day. All the shops here paid protection money to the gangs. Moreover, these small gangs settled their disputes privately, away from public view, perhaps because the influence of one of the 10 elders was strong enough. Anyway, no one committed crimes at night. The liveliness belonged to the city, while the suburbs were much quieter. People generally avoided alleys like this. There were several late-night snack stalls in the alley. Your new city didn't have roadside stalls, those who set up stalls here didn't face grumpy city officials but real gangsters. Although the place was remote, it had many customers. The small bungalows were filled with the smell of cooking oil and roasting meat. Boss, 2 more skewers of big kidney. All right. The barbecue stall owner skillfully added 2 more skewers of big kidney to the grill and brushed them with oil. John looked at Robson with a helpless expression. So, why did you suddenly invite me here for dinner? Don't be so cold-hearted. The big kidney here is delicious. You wouldn't not eat this, would you? John casually picked up a big kidney skewer and took a bite. He had to admit that this place tasted pretty good. The portion was also very generous, unlike the barbecue stalls in his previous life. John felt somewhat full after eating 7 skewers. Robson took 2 gulps of beer. John, are you interested in taking on a job? Why didn't you say it in the office? John was still very curious. You went out for your training. I already mentioned it in the office. Robson was silent for a moment, then stared straight at John and explained, didn't we hunt down Malik last time? After all, it was our studio that hunted him down, which led to those casualties. Our studio gave the families of the deceased ordinary people some money. The people in our studio were also greatly injured. The studio's reserve funds are already running low. Recently, there's a big job. John put down the big kidney in his hand and looked directly at Robson. Why didn't you say it in the office? John was very curious because Robson opened this studio himself, so there was no need to undermine his own business. Robson's smile froze. They won't take this job. I've already told them before. Robson downed a bottle of beer. Robson began to explain on his own. This time, it wasn't about capturing a villain but protecting one. This time, they had to guard against a revenger, a chivalrous person. His name is still in doubt. He wears a mask when he acts chivalrously and doesn't show his true face. No one knows what he looks like, and no one knows who he is. Unlike the last mission, where they only knew the person but not the ability, his Nin ability is very clear, it's definitely of the enhancement type. Seeing John's puzzled look, Robson continued to explain, he started his chivalrous acts 6 years ago and has already killed 5 black-hearted bosses of corporate workshops and wiped out countless small black-hearted workshops and human trafficking dens. He knew it was very difficult for Robson, but John asked himself if he couldn't protect a villain and kill a chivalrous person. John learned Nin abilities to become stronger, so he could protect himself and still be able to do what he wanted. If he took this task, John's thoughts would not be clear. John returned to his residence and turned the lock. He took 2 gulps of soda. He couldn't sleep because there were too many things happening today. He did some draws and the results were not bad. There was also what Robson said. John stayed in bed for an hour without falling asleep, so he got up and played 2 games. The next day, John returned to the studio with 2 dark circles under his eyes. "Yo, John, what's wrong?" The gaming trio greeted him. "It's nothing. I stayed up late playing games last night." The atmosphere became awkward again. No one in the entire studio spoke. Robson put his legs on the table, exhaling smoke. It seemed everyone knew that only Robson had taken on that job. "Do you want me to order some milk tea?" Robson asked. Robson usually often treated the others in the studio to food. But not many people responded today. "I don't need it." "I don't need it either." They didn't look at John. "Then I'll pass too." Robson smiled awkwardly, but no one was looking at him. There was already a gap between the people in the studio. Now, the others in the studio were isolating Robson, not knowing how to communicate with Robson or how to face Robson, who was about to protect a villain. Robson wanted to compensate those innocent people who died, but he didn't have the financial resources. The others in the studio wanted to as well, but they couldn't protect such a villain. There were no tasks today, and the others left for various reasons. Only John and Robson were left in the entire studio.